Chapter 17:19. Ah, Yi Shiwen, the heavens have not forsaken me. You are dead. The star beast laughed and roared constantly. Yi Shiwen glanced at the sky. In the sky, countless tribulation clouds were entrenched, and a terrifying power was boiling in it. Countless thunder dragons were entrenched in it. Even Yi Shiwen, who had always been calm, began to be nervous at this time. However, his hands were still not slowed down, and there was no change in the slightest, because he knew very well that it was useless to be nervous at this time. In the end, only Star Beast would benefit from it. Boom! 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 The ancient characters in his hands constantly blasted on the Star Beast's body. This Star Beast also constantly screamed. These ancient characters were like chains, firmly integrated into its flesh and blood, constantly evaporating its flesh and blood. It wanted to control its body and enslave its soul. It kept struggling, trying to break free, but there was no way at all. Yi Shiwen's cold reaction made it feel desperate. It could hardly imagine how a person could be indifferent to such an extent. Even if he knew that heaven's retribution was coming, his expression did not change at all, and his actions did not change in the slightest. He was simply indifferent like a robot. In other words, the person who was going to experience heaven's retribution was not him at all, but another person. It was simply unimaginable how cold-hearted such a person would have to be like this. Voila! After a long time, finally, the first bolt of lightning directly struck down. Boom! There was a huge roar. The first lightning seemed as if it was going to split the heavens and the earth. A terrifying power boiled in the void and directly fell on Yi Shiwen's body. It directly swept up a huge storm. The storm dissipated, and Yi Shiwen's whole body was like a bloody man. His whole body was a complete mess of flesh and blood. Soon, the wounds on his body recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Although the demon seed was constantly growing, it also brought unprecedented vitality to his body, as if all the vitality in his whole body would be burned away in a short time. Yi Shiwen's whole body shook, and blood flowed down from his head. His whole body seemed to be burnt. However, the seals on his hands did not stop for even a moment. Yi Shiwen, are you crazy? You don't care about the heavenly tribulation? Seeing that Yi Shiwen didn't care about the heavenly tribulation at all, and was condensing one ancient character after another, Yi Shiwen's expression changed. It continued to fall into the Star Beast's body. Streaks of seven-colored divine light kept splashing out. Yi Shiwen remained unmoved. Crash! 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 Streaks of lightning, like sharp swords, directly struck Yi Shiwen's body. In the void, Yi Shiwen's body was surrounded by countless golden lights, which condensed into an armor-like shape and surrounded him. He also sped up his movements. Almost done, just a little bit more. Yi Shiwen shouted in his heart, "Give me some time! Give me some time!" Although countless lightning bolts directly struck his body, they couldn't stop his movements at all. His strength was increasing every minute and second, and these injuries were also constantly recovering as his aura continued to rise. Roars! The seal technique had entered its final stage. The Star Beast struggle was getting more and more intense, and more than half of the God Rule chains had been broken off. Just as it was about to break free completely, countless lightning bolts struck down from the sky and blasted it into the ground. Roar, why did you strike me? God, are you blind? He kept roaring, but at this time, it was simply too late. Yi Shiwen had completed the last seal and struck the last ancient character into the Star Beast. Surrender to me! Yi Shiwen's shout was like a great bell. It instantly poured into the Star Beast's ears. Even in this environment where the sky was full of thunder and lightning, it was extremely clear. How is it possible? Don't even think about it. The Star Beast suddenly let out a terrifying roar. It wanted to resist, but it felt a terrible force binding it, forcing it to kneel down. Its huge body directly lay down, unable to move. It wanted to resist, but it was simply powerless. If it wanted to have the slightest thought of resisting, there would be a heart-wrenching pain that tore its whole body apart. Yi Shiwen sneered, "From now on, you can only be in existence like my servant." Rumble! Rumble! A series of violent thunderbolts exploded on Yi Shiwen's body. Yi Shiwen was caught off guard and was blasted out on the spot. He directly hit the barrier, and the entire barrier had a huge fluctuation. Ha ha! Go to hell! Go to hell! The Star Beast saw Yi Shiwen being blasted away and suddenly laughed. It was in an extremely carefree mood. But just when he had such a thought in his heart, he suddenly roared in pain as if he had been electrocuted. Some of the thunder and lightning that constantly fell from the sky also directly struck his body. If he was struck by heaven's retribution just now, because he intervened in the place where Yi Shiwen was crossing the retribution, then at this time, he was struck because he had become Yi Shiwen's battle pet. At this time, it was not just a few thunderbolts that struck his body occasionally, but hundreds of thunderbolts directly fell on his body. Damn, this kid, what the hell is he? Why is heaven's retribution so terrifying? He kept roaring and struggling. He was completely stunned. Even a star beast like him was not so terrifying when crossing the heaven's retribution of the celestial being retribution. In other words, it was not the same thing at all. Back then, his most terrifying heaven's retribution was only comparable to Yi Shiwen's first wave of heaven's retribution. If this continued, wouldn't it be a world-ending heaven's retribution? Within the range of heaven's retribution, it would be hard to survive. He could withstand it because his realm was much higher than Yi Shiwen's, and his physical body was also very strong. But even so, when these heaven's retribution fell, it was still like a sharp blade slashing on his body, causing his skin to split open. Boom! 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 Bolts of thunderbolts fell, and this was only a small portion. The most terrifying thing was that most of the heaven's retribution was concentrated on Yi Shiwen's side. He could not imagine how Yi Shiwen was going to resist the heaven's retribution of the celestial being retribution. He had never heard of it before. Who the hell was this person? Any one of these heaven's retribution was comparable to the full blow of an initial celestial being retribution expert. Attacks of this level weren't too fatal for him. However, when dozens or hundreds of such attacks came crashing down on him, even he would be split open and his flesh would be lacerated. What he couldn't imagine was that Yi Shiwen was actually able to hold on until now. At this moment, Yi Shiwen had to face the attack of thousands of lightning bolts striking down at the same time. Any one of them could heavily injure an initial celestial being retribution expert and completely annihilate a level 9 celestial being retribution expert. Such a heaven's retribution was simply a world-ending calamity for a level 9 celestial being retribution expert. Encountering such a calamity was basically the end of one. How many bad things did one have to do for such a calamity to descend from the heavens? Yi Shiwen couldn't help but laugh bitterly. The heavens really didn't give him any way out. The heavens' retribution was unprecedentedly terrifying. It was a new level of strength that Yi Shiwen had gone through in the past. But even so, he didn't have any intention of giving up in the face of internal and external troubles. The true martial stone sword in his hand was also continuously slashing out shocking sword light. Boom! 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 Although these lightning bolts were terrifying, they were still far inferior to the true martial stone sword. However, even with the protection of the true martial stone sword, it still didn't have much of an effect when facing the overwhelming heaven's retribution. Boom! 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 These lightning bolts struck down directly on Yi Shiwen's body. They didn't give Yi Shiwen too many chances at all and directly forced him to retreat. Yi Shiwen's figure kept retreating in the void. The star beast at the side didn't have any intention of helping him at all. It couldn't wait for Yi Shiwen to be struck to death by the heaven's retribution. If that was the case, it would at least feel better. Yi Shiwen's complexion was completely unrecognizable. Fresh blood covered his entire face, and his body seemed to be bathed in fresh blood. Flesh and blood were constantly being split open on his body, and then they were permeated by an even more powerful demonic aura. His wounds were also recovering at an even more shocking speed. If it wasn't for the demonic seed continuously spitting out powerful energy, Yi Shiwen would have been completely annihilated in the heaven's retribution. Boom! 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 Yi Shiwen's entire body was in an endless sea of lightning. and his figure was almost invisible. At this time, the star beast could only vaguely see that Yi Shiwen's body was completely submerged in the sea of lightning. The defeat was getting more and more tragic. Boom! There was only an incomparably loud roar, and a huge torrent of energy instantly swept out from Yi Shiwen's body. Immediately after, it was submerged by even more terrifying lightning bolts. In the void, countless terrifying figures actually appeared. A higher level of heaven's retribution had already formed impatiently, and then it rushed over from the void. Boom! The terrifying heaven's retribution soldier was like a sharp blade, and it directly stabbed into Yi Shiwen's body. Then, the star beast suddenly couldn't sense Yi Shiwen's aura. Could it be? He's dead. Chapter 17:20. Could it be? He's dead. In the void, a young figure was shuttling through the universe. He muttered to himself from time to time, "It's impossible. How amazing and talented is my granduncle? How could he be dead?" However, he continued to deny his own judgment. But in the blink of an eye, 100 years have passed. Even our true martial school has come out from the demon-worshipping religion's chaos. Why can't I see my granduncle's figure? This person was none other than Yi Fengyun. At this time, he was constantly searching in the void. In fact, such a search had happened countless times in the past hundreds of years. Almost every once in a while, he would come out to search. He absolutely couldn't believe that his great-uncle, who was able to make the entire Bai Majiao army die tragically, would actually die, although the small world had completely collapsed and was a scene of devastation. The star beasts that were originally used for the newcomers to practice were also completely extinct. It was said that a great enemy of the true martial school was imprisoned there. However, he had completely disappeared in the chaos. Soon, the true martial school's higher-ups sealed off the area and blocked the news. After 100 years had passed, not many people still remembered that place. Yi Fengyun was one of them, because his granduncle had disappeared in that place. For him, his granduncle had been his biggest idol since he was young. He grew up listening to Yi Shiwen's legend. He didn't believe that the myth and legend he firmly believed in would be destroyed one day. Even after 100 years, he had already entered the transcendent realm. He became the first peerless genius to enter the transcendent realm in the true martial school. It was even shorter than the time Yi Shiwen took to enter the transcendent realm. He had already become the top genius of the true martial school's new generation. He was already one of the higher-ups of the true martial school. However, he still didn't give up searching. It was because he firmly believed. However, he also knew that this hope was very slim. For hundreds of years, the higher-ups of the true martial school had organized countless searches. They had explored this part of the universe countless times, but they didn't find any traces that they wanted to find. Back then, Yi Shiwen had suddenly disappeared, leaving behind only the dilapidated alien battlefield. It was as if it had been baptized by lightning and turned into smoke and dust. The only thing that was left behind was the true martial stone sword that Yi Shiwen had borrowed back then. No one knew what had happened to it. Perhaps only a few higher-ups of the true martial school knew. After that, the true martial school never organized a search again. It seemed that they had already confirmed something. He also knew that the chances were slim, but he was still very unwilling. Just as he was about to leave after searching for a while, he didn't find anything. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure gathered in the sky. Boundless tribulation clouds condensed in the void. In the void of the universe, even a huge star was just a grain of sand in the ocean. However, this tribulation cloud looked incomparably huge. Someone is undergoing tribulation. He suddenly realized that it was impossible for such a large cloud to form naturally in the universe. There was only one possibility, and that was that someone was undergoing a tribulation. However, this terrifying pressure shocked him. He was extremely shocked. Just approaching it from afar made him feel suffocated. It was as if he was going to kneel down under the pressure of the tribulation in the next second. Who is undergoing tribulation? It's so terrifying. He looked over and could only see a green figure standing in the middle of the tribulation clouds. He wasn't tall, but he was like a mountain, incomparably majestic. That's granduncle. He immediately realized that it couldn't be wrong. If his senses weren't wrong, it couldn't be wrong. However, compared to 100 years ago, Yi Shiwen's aura seemed to be stronger. It was so strong that people couldn't even look at him directly. He was like a god. 100 years, 100 years. Come on this time. Let's fight to our heart's content. Yi Shiwen's eyes quietly looked at the tribulation clouds in the void. His expression was extremely calm. Before he knew it, over 100 years had passed. When he went through the heavenly tribulation 100 years ago, he had used up almost all of his resources. Even he himself had died under the heavenly tribulation, unable to escape. Just when he thought he was going to die, he persevered. Even his body was blasted into a bloody mess, almost turning into powder. When he was about to die, the magic seed actually matured. After maturing, the magic seed began to spit out power. The power that should have been absorbed by Star Beast Avatar was all instilled into Yi Shiwen's body in one breath, hanging on to his life. Then little by little he finally recovered to the current point. Now that he thought about it, it was probably because Star Beast had been subdued by him, so the demon seed had undergone such an amazing change. He thought he would die under heaven's retribution, but he didn't expect it to be a blessing in disguise, and he suddenly obtained such great benefits. Compared to the past, the current him had undergone earth-shaking changes. He was powerful to an unimaginable extent. Over the years, the demon seed had been secretly absorbing his martial power. Originally, this martial power would have been completely transferred to the Star Beast. But now, it was completely absorbed by Yi Shiwen. It was conceivable that the release of hundreds of years of martial power had all concentrated on him. He had grown to an astonishing level all of a sudden. In 100 years, he finally completely healed his body that was severely damaged under heaven's retribution. At the same time, he absorbed most of the power in the demon seed. He finally completed the nirvana process and was reborn from the void. He was reborn in a powder-like state. However, he had just been reborn. Heaven's retribution was almost like a ghost, following him like a shadow. Yi Shiwen looked coldly into the void. The heaven's retribution that was delayed for hundreds of years was finally coming again. But this time, Yi Shiwen was already different. When Yi Shiwen faced heaven's retribution 100 years ago, he couldn't do his best at all. He had to think of ways to deal with Star Beast. Moreover, this heaven's retribution came too suddenly. He was almost unprepared. But now it was already different. Walalala! Countless electric dragons swept over and directly blasted towards Yi Shiwen. In the void, these electric dragons were constantly roaring. They rumbled and rushed towards Yi Shiwen. At this time, Yi Shiwen's body spewed out countless divinities. In the void, it turned into a sharp sword and slashed towards the electric dragons that swooped down from the void. Boom! 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 The electric dragons were blasted by him in the void. The heaven's retribution that could cause terrible damage to Yi Shiwen 100 years ago was like a great calamity that could destroy the world. At this time, it could not even get close to him. It directly exploded in the void. More and more thunder dragons condensed in the void, but they couldn't get close to Yi Shiwen. His body had condensed into a golden sword, and it seemed as if it had formed a natural protective umbrella around his body to protect him. He has become stronger again. In a pile of meteorites in the distance, a huge star beast was lying in it. After hundreds of years, the aura on his body had become a lot stronger. The bed formed by the repeated encounters with Yi Shiwen and heaven's retribution seemed to have completely recovered. Now that he remembered that he almost died under heaven's retribution, he still felt incomparable palpitation. Just a little bit more, and he would have completely died under heaven's retribution. If Yi Shiwen did not collapse in the end, the one who died under heaven's retribution would definitely be him. However, he was also very lucky. If Yi Shiwen did not collapse first, perhaps he would have been dead for a long time by now. What he did not expect was that Yi Shiwen had already turned into powder, but Yi Shiwen was still alive. Although he watched Yi Shiwen being blasted into powder, he knew that Yi Shiwen was definitely not dead. The reason was very simple. Because Yi Shiwen was fine, which in itself explained the problem. He had signed a contract with Yi Shiwen. In other words, regardless of whether he was willing or not, once Yi Shiwen died, he would definitely die as well. The power of this rule was above his law, and he couldn't violate it. During these hundreds of years, he had been hiding and secretly healing his injuries. It was not only the injuries left by the battle with Yi Shiwen and Heaven's retribution. More importantly, the countless years of imprisonment had caused damage to his bone marrow. Otherwise, with his cultivation, he would not have just finished healing after hundreds of years. He did not know how long it would take for him to recover his cultivation. During these hundreds of years, he arranged the illusion array to deceive the people from true martial school who came to search for him. He did not dare to leave for a moment. It was ridiculous to say that although he could not wait for Yi Shiwen to die, in fact, he did not dare to let Yi Shiwen die. Because if Yi Shiwen died, then he would also die. He did not know what was Yi Shiwen's current situation, but he knew that Yi Shiwen was definitely not dead. Therefore, he could only deceive this area and not let anyone disturb him. With his cultivation, even if he was not at the peak, these people from true martial school could not detect him. Although he also wanted to devour true martial domain in one breath for revenge, this idea was just a thought. If he dared to do so, he was sure that if Yi Shiwen was resurrected one day, it would be his death. People under the eaves had to bow their heads. However, he did not know what kind of transformation Yi Shiwen had experienced in the past hundreds of years. It was a kind of nirvana. Chapter 17:21. That was a kind of nirvana. Yes, in these hundreds of years, Yi Shiwen was experiencing a kind of nirvana, a kind of unprecedented nirvana. Legend has it that the masters of the Phoenix clan would undergo a nirvana every once in a while. When their nirvana was completed, the strength of the whole person would undergo a rebirth. And Yi Shiwen was experiencing such a nirvana. Yi Shiwen, who had the Phoenix regeneration technique, had been constantly operating over the years. To some extent, he was already very close to the physique of the Phoenix clan. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to survive after his body was blown into powder just by relying on the power output of the demon seed. The real root cause of his survival was because the Phoenix regeneration technique in his body had finally broken through, and it had broken through to a whole new level. For many years, Yi Shiwen had been practicing the Phoenix regeneration technique, but he had already practiced to the peak of the second level, but he had been unable to deduce the state of the third level. The first level of the Phoenix regeneration technique was extremely fast for the recovery of the physical body, and the second level of the Phoenix regeneration technique could also quickly recover the spirit and the bed of the soul. However, after Yi Shiwen stepped into the peak of the second level, he had been unable to practice the legendary third level. Just like the tyrant body, he was stuck there, unable to advance or retreat. And this time, he was blown into powder, which actually coincided with the essence of the Phoenix regeneration technique, which was nirvana. Only through nirvana could one be reborn. And this time, he was really blown into powder, meeting the requirements of nirvana. Under the guidance of the Phoenix regeneration technique and the support of the demon seed, he could be reborn. However, this process took hundreds of years. Bit by bit, he recovered and was reborn. The process was extremely long, but he felt how lucky he was to be able to survive under such circumstances. Moreover, the Phoenix regeneration technique had also successfully entered the third level, which was another brand new realm. His skills had also experienced an explosive increase. Compared to 100 years ago, he could not be mentioned in the same breath. 100 years ago, he was only able to defeat a master of the celestial realm late stage. Now, even if it was a master at the peak of the celestial realm, he no longer cared. This was strength, true tyrannical strength. And at this time, in the void, the tribulation clouds also became denser and denser. It seemed as if Yi Shiwen's careless attitude had thoroughly infuriated the heavens. The heavenly tribulation suddenly increased by several times, and the terrifying power instantly boiled up. The thunder dragons that filled the sky directly turned into lightning exotic beasts, whistling as they pounced towards Yi Shiwen. But Yi Shiwen was not afraid at all and directly rushed up. He did not wait for the heaven's retribution to attack him. He wanted to attack the heaven's retribution. For the past 100 years, he of the retribution of the retribution of retribution, he had accumulated too much resent, and he had not been able to fight for a long time. Riaf of retribution. Yishuan's fist blasted out. The dreadful fist energy distorted into a massive universe and swallowed a lightning ominous beast that had pounced towards him. Not a single bit of it was left behind. It transformed into energy that filled the sky and poured into Yi Shiwen's body. Yi Shiwen felt that the power of these retribution beasts was not inferior to the celestial realm intermediate master. This heaven's retribution really went all out just to deal with him. For him 100 years ago, this might be a fatal threat. However, for Yi Shiwen, who had fully recovered and eliminated the internal injuries in his body, this was still not enough. Boom! Yi Shiwen took a step and formed a powerful shockwave that swept out in circles. The lightning beasts that were pouncing towards him from all directions were turned into a mass of powder. They weren't Yi Shiwen's match at all. So strong. In the distance, Yi Fengyan looked at Yi Shiwen, who was in the midst of retribution. She was incomparably shocked. In this heaven's retribution, any of the retribution beasts might be able to destroy the current true martial school. However, in Yi Shiwen's hands, they could not even withstand a single blow. They were like paper tigers that were easily destroyed. Compared to such heaven's retribution, the transcendent realm retribution that he had just passed a while ago was nothing. Heaven's retribution was as gentle as a sheep. For the true martial school's experts, the transcendent realm retribution might be the most horrifying and difficult to pass in their lives. If they could not pass it, they would turn into ashes. However, once they passed it, they would immediately become one of the higher-ups of the true martial school. It could be said to be the difference between life and death. However, compared to the heaven's retribution that Yi Shiwen had passed, it was not on the same level at all. Looking at it from afar, one could feel a wave of coercion sweeping over. The heaven's retribution was impressive, as if it was angry and roaring. Originally, heaven's retribution should not have any emotions. However, at this moment, it felt like it was angry. It seemed to be angry that Yi Shiwen dared to challenge the heaven's retribution. In this scene, not only Yi Fengyan, but even the star beast was a little stunned and a little scared. It didn't even know how long it had lived in its life. It could be said that it didn't know how many so-called geniuses it had seen, but absolutely no one's retribution was so horrifying. It didn't know how much sin this person had committed, or how much of a genius he was. Did the heavens need to test him like this? Did it need to use such heaven's retribution to destroy the world? Even if it were to destroy the world, such heaven's retribution would be enough, but it was used to deal with a person. This kid is really not simple. Looking at this scene, the star beast, who was not convinced by Yi Shiwen at all, seemed to have a little fluctuation. Although it was forcibly conquered by Yi Shiwen, it did not mean that it had surrendered to Yi Shiwen. In its view, Yi Shiwen was just using tricks. To conquer it, Yi Shiwen was still 100,000 years away. Yi Shiwen didn't deserve to talk about conquering it at all. Although it couldn't resist, it was definitely not convinced. But at this moment, looking at Yi Shiwen's expression, it made it a little suspicious. Maybe this person was not as simple as it thought. Maybe following this person was not a bad thing. Although he was just an impolite fellow of the human race, he didn't seem to be completely useless. At this moment, Yi Shiwen naturally didn't know that there were two people watching him go through the retribution. Instead, he was fully focused on the battle. Although these celestial realm intermediate lightning beasts were not his match, there were too many of them, so even he had to be careful. Otherwise, he might really fail miserably. Pung! 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 The more Yi Shiwen fought, the stronger he got. As he continued to attack, his control of this brand new body after Nirvana became stronger and stronger. The strength that he could display was also stronger and stronger. Compared to the beginning when he was still a little inexperienced, it was completely different now. Hundreds of years of grievance were all vented out at once. It was really satisfying. His moves became more and more natural. Each and every move contained the principles of laws. They weren't moves that were casually used. Finally, after a long while, the last lightning beast was completely destroyed by him. And at this moment, a horrifying beast was formed in the void. To think that it was a mystical dragon. This divine dragon was condensed in the void. It was the size of a small mountain and looked incomparably terrifying. Its face was ferocious, and each scale was vivid and lifelike. It was as though a real divine dragon had come back to life. Yi Shiwen's expression became a little solemn. He knew that although these lightning beasts were formed from lightning energy, they were actually not weaker than the original living beings. In fact, they were even stronger than the original living beings. There was even a possibility that the heavenly Tao had extracted the consciousness of these dead, powerful beasts and used lightning to form this body. So even if it wasn't a real divine dragon, it made Yi Shiwen feel extremely solemn. What? That's a divine dragon. Yi Fengyan was already shocked. Yi Shiwen's heaven's retribution was not only the most difficult kind of heaven's retribution to pass according to the legends, but it also manifested a terrifying ancient beast like the divine dragon. He had almost only seen this kind of beast in pictures. He had never seen a real one. Yi Shiwen's heaven's retribution was actually this kind. This made him directly stunned on the spot. Roar! This divine dragon clawed at Yi Shiwen almost as soon as it was condensed. It didn't have the slightest delay. It was extremely fast. The dragon claw clawed out countless traces of the principles, which were forcibly clawed out by it. Well, it's said that the great accomplishment of the tyrant body can challenge the gods and kill the dragon clan. I'll give it a try. After Yi Shiwen's face became solemn, an expression of eagerness appeared on his face. He didn't dodge. He directly spread out his palm and formed a dragon claw. He directly clawed at it on the spot. The great dragon capture technique. A dragon's roar came directly from his body. His entire person seemed to have turned into a humanoid dragon. Bang! An incomparably loud roar accompanied the collision of the two dragon claws in the void, sweeping up a terrifying storm, directly annihilating the lightning dragon that was still falling from the sky. Roar! Countless energy storms dissipated, but the dragon could be seen constantly roaring angrily. Its front claw had been completely smashed. In the competition of physical strength, Yi Shiwen almost gained the upper hand in an instant. So strong! Yi Shiwen looked at his palm with an excited look on his face. His tyrant body had become unprecedentedly tyrannical after hundreds of years of nirvana. He would have been able to fight evenly with this vicious dragon if it had been 100 years ago. However, he could smash the dragon's claw with just one palm strike now. Of course, this was related to the improvement of strength. However, the tyrant body also seemed to have undergone unknown changes in the past 100 years. It had become more tyrannical. Take another punch from me. Chapter 17:22. Take another punch from me. Yi Shiwen burst into loud laughter. He took a step forward and appeared in front of this huge dragon in an instant. Although the dragon's front claw was directly smashed by Yi Shiwen, it was not affected. After all, it was a body condensed by thunder and lightning. It did not matter at all. Immediately, the other dragon claw was smashed down directly. Boom! Yi Shiwen directly confronted it. The entire void was shaking crazily. It was unknown how terrifying the physical strength of both sides were. It could be said that the strength could uproot a mountain and capture the stars and the moon. Just the collision of their physical bodies could shake the heavens. What kind of terrifying power was this? Boom! Another dragon claw of this ominous dragon was blown up by Yi Shiwen. It only persisted for a while, and it was directly smashed by Yi Shiwen. At this time, Yi Shiwen was like a humanoid monster. It was very terrifying. Roar! This dragon roared continuously. Its other dragon claw had finally recovered 70 to 80%. It was about to blast towards Yi Shiwen again. But at this time, Yi Shiwen was one step ahead and directly rushed in front of this huge dragon. Roar! This dragon opened its big mouth and swallowed Yi Shiwen directly. It disappeared all of a sudden. How could this be? Yi Fengyan, who was in the distance, saw this scene. She was suddenly shocked. How could Yi Shiwen, who had the upper hand just now, be swallowed by this lightning dragon all of a sudden? he suddenly became a little anxious. If it was not because the tribulation cloud had not dispersed yet, and it was emitting a powerful coercion that blocked him outside, he would have rushed in immediately. In contrast, the star beast was much calmer because it did not feel any threat to its life. Most importantly, the tribulation cloud had not dispersed yet, which meant that no matter what, Yi Shiwen should not have received any fatal threat. Therefore, he was not in a hurry. Moreover, he did not dare to rush in at this time. Once he did, the heavenly tribulation might immediately be upgraded and become a stronger version. If that happened, the gathering would become a disaster. That was not what he wanted. Although he couldn't wait for Yi Shiwen to die immediately, but he couldn't just watch him die, because if something happened to Yi Shiwen, he would immediately sense it. Boom! Sure enough, as expected by the Star Beast avatar, there was a huge roar in the entire sky. A terrifying force blasted out of the dragon's belly and rushed straight into the sky. It was Yi Shiwen. He had blasted a huge hole in the belly of the vicious dragon. Then, Yi Shiwen's figure jumped out of the hole. At the same time, a powerful and terrifying tail swung down like a mountain. It happened almost at the same time. It could be said to be extremely fast. If it was a normal creature, even if it was a dragon, it would have died from severe injuries. Quick! 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 It was so fast that it almost didn't give Yi Shiwen any chance to breathe. Whoosh! However, Yi Shiwen's speed was even faster. He directly dodged it on the spot. Boom! On his body, countless power of wind and thunder spread out. A terrifying power of wind and thunder directly spread out, forming a domain of the power of wind and thunder. In this domain, he was the ruler, the god of wind and the god of thunder. No matter how ferocious the vicious dragon below was, it was not a true dragon after all. Yi Shiwen lived in the domain of the power of wind and thunder. Although this vicious dragon was very fierce, the thunder and lightning that it had unleashed had been absorbed by Yi Shiwen's domain. Instead, it had become a great tonic for Yi Shiwen's domain. Boom! Yi Shiwen opened his hands and directly grabbed this incomparably huge dragon's tail. Then he suddenly exerted his strength and suddenly grabbed this incomparably huge divine dragon in his hands. Then he ruthlessly threw it out. Boom! This incomparably huge ferocious dragon ferociously crashed into the innumerable meteorites in the distance, instantly wiping out a wave of these meteorites. Before it could react, Yi Shiwen directly chased after it. He directly stepped down with his foot. The sky seemed to be completely shattered in an instant, forming a terrible shock wave. Yi Shiwen directly stepped through the body of this divine dragon on the spot. This incomparably ferocious dragon wasn't a match for Yi Shiwen at all. Yi Shiwen had made full use of this gap to the extreme. Boom! 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 Yi Shiwen continued to stomp on the ground one after another. Every time this vicious dragon wanted to escape and struggle, it would be kicked down by Yi Shiwen. Every time, it would fall very far. Then, Yi Shiwen directly stepped through it. Yi Shiwen's powerful strength was fully reflected at this time. Damn, it's too brutal. Star Beast on the side, at this time, looked at Yi Shiwen, who was under heaven's retribution, speechlessly. He had seen many people crossing heaven's retribution, but it was the first time he saw someone crossing heaven's retribution in such a brutal way. Whether it was the fierceness of heaven's retribution or the fierceness of Yi Shiwen's method of crossing heaven's retribution, it made him speechless. He never thought that there could be such a brutal way of crossing heaven's retribution. It was simply to the point of scaring people to death. Most people who encountered this kind of variant heaven's retribution could only pray that they could survive. Yi Shiwen was indeed the first one who trampled on heaven's retribution so brutally. Moreover, he was keenly aware that Yi Shiwen would absorb a large amount of thunder and lightning energy every time he stepped on this fierce dragon. And Yi Shiwen would absorb all of it in one breath. Boom! 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 Every time Yi Shiwen stepped through the body of the divine dragon, he could absorb a lot of energy. His cultivation was also improving little by little. This divine dragon under his feet had no room to resist at all. No one knew how much time had passed. Yi Shiwen just kept on kicking the divine dragon down like this. Finally, the divine dragon, which was originally the size of a small mountain, was reduced to the height of a person. Yi Shiwen finally stopped kicking it away. Instead, he directly grabbed this divine dragon in his hand. Boom! This divine dragon was directly grabbed and exploded on the spot. It turned into a lightning storm that filled the sky. Then, Yi Shiwen opened his mouth and directly swallowed it. Boom! In Yi Shiwen's body, a huge amount of energy directly spewed out from the pores. He stood in the void like a peerless god. He closed his eyes and digested the power of this divine dragon. At this time, heaven's retribution gradually subsided. The dark clouds also became lighter little by little. Yi Shiwen suddenly opened his eyes and said, "Want to leave now? Isn't it too late?" He directly spread out his big hand. It expanded with the wind and became bigger and bigger. Soon, it became as big as the sky. He directly absorbed all the tribulation clouds that filled the sky. In the tribulation clouds, the power of heaven's retribution struggled in it. It wanted to escape from Yi Shiwen's hand. However, Yi Shiwen didn't give him any chance at all. Golden divinities covered it, and then directly digested this terrifying power. In the distance, seeing that the tribulation clouds were taken away, Yi Fengyan clearly felt that the coercion on her body had all disappeared. She could not help but stare at Yi Shiwen in the void dumbfoundedly. This granduncle's method of crossing the retribution was not just ordinary ferocious. It was simply unheard of and unseen. He did not dare to imagine what kind of person could cross the retribution in this way. Although he did not know what kind of heaven's retribution Yi Shiwen was crossing, he could still feel that it was an incredible tribulation. And after devouring the energy of the tribulation clouds, the momentum on Yi Shiwen's body swept up like a huge storm, sweeping in all directions. Boom! On Yi Shiwen's body, it was like a terrible flood broke through the blockade of a dam. All of a sudden, everything collapsed with a loud bang and directly rushed to the next realm. Heaven's End Realm. He had finally stepped into the Heaven's End Realm. In order to enter this realm, he wasted a full 100 years. 100 years passed in the blink of an eye, but the aura on his body continued to rise like there was no time to rest. He went from the initial Heaven's End Realm to the peak of the initial Heaven's End Realm. Then his aura continued to rise, charging to the next realm. The foundation that he had accumulated for 100 years was finally going to explode in one day. Yi Shiwen closed his eyes to rest. The aura on his body continued to rise. In just a short while, it seemed like there was no obstruction at all as it broke through the barrier of the initial Heaven's End Realm. Intermediate Heaven's End Realm. One could pretty much say that he rose up from the ground without any obstruction. After entering the Intermediate Heaven's End Realm, Yi Shiwen's aura was still charging to a higher level. It was like the breakthrough just now didn't cause any obstruction to him at all and didn't consume much energy. Not long after the Intermediate Heaven's End Realm, he naturally reached the Late Heaven's End Realm. Peak Heaven's End Realm. Pretty much all of a sudden, he reached the peak of Heaven's End Realm without any obstruction at all. But at this moment, Yi Shiwen had no intentions of calming down. That was because he wanted to charge into the King Division in one go. With 100 years of accumulation, he didn't find it difficult to charge into the peak of Heaven's End Realm. The true difficulty was how to step into the King Division of Heaven's End Realm. Only by stepping into the King Division could he truly step into the ranks of the top experts and have the ability to fight against Sun King, Jewing Monster King, etc. Chapter 17:23. He had already stepped into the peak of the Heaven Realm, but compared to those truly strong King Realm experts, there was still a huge gap. They were both at the peak of the Heaven Realm, but the King Realm experts were the true rulers. Only by reaching the King Realm could one say that they were invincible. That battle left a deep impression on him. Even if he wore a mecha and his combat strength was comparable to a peak Heaven Realm expert. But in the hands of the Jiuying Demon King, they couldn't even last one move. In front of a Heaven Realm Pinnacle expert, normal Heaven Realm Pinnacle experts were as laughable as toys. They weren't his match at all. It was like they weren't even on the same level. But normal peak heaven realm experts didn't have a chance to step into the king realm. This was the mysterious realm before one broke into the next realm. Each king realm expert could sweep a bunch of celestial end realm experts. These were the true experts of the king realm, the truly strong experts. He became solemn and sat down cross-legged. In his mind, numerous martial path memories were awakening and surging into his brain. Honk, honk, honk. Each loud explosion would bring with it a sky-covering aura that swept up. Yi Shiwen's strength was also increasing step by step. After stepping into the peak of the heaven realm, normal people wouldn't be able to continue improving. It was tantamount to trying to force a way out of a situation where one's strength was already at its peak. This was not something an ordinary person could do. The Mingxin ancient tree in his body shone brightly and covered his entire body, causing his aura to become more and more mysterious. Yi Shiwen suddenly opened his eyes after a long time had passed. It seemed as if he had entered into a mysterious realm. His aura had slowly climbed to the peak. He had finally digested the power that had been accumulated by the devil seed in his body for many years. King Realm, I finally stepped into it. Joy appeared on Yi Shiwen's face. Only by stepping into the King Realm could one say that one had the ability to fight with those top experts. After a full 3 days and 3 nights, Yi Shiwen finally completely consolidated his realm. He restrained all of his aura, just like everyone else. He didn't look like a king-level expert at all. At most, he looked like an ordinary expert at the celestial realm. Granduncle. At this time, Yi Fengyun directly flew all the way from the distance. His face was full of excitement. He had finally seen Yi Shiwen again after 100 years. Yi Shiwen smiled faintly. He was in a good mood after getting rid of the big trouble in his body. Without the devil seed constantly absorbing his power, his progress would be much faster. Moreover, he wouldn't need to use a lot of power to suppress the development of the devil seed. It could be said that in the past, due to the demonic seed, his progress was much slower than it should have been. However, it was also because of this that his foundation was incomparably deep. Although he had spent over 100 years, he felt that it was still very worth it. During these 100 years, he had resolved the internal injuries in his body, allowing him to go into battle without any burden. I've let you worry for the past 100 years. Yi Shiwen looked at Yi Fengyun and said with a smile, No, it's nothing. As long as Granduncle is fine, that's the best. Yi Fengyun said excitedly. All right, you can go back first. Yi Shiwen said, I still have some things to deal with. When I'm done, I'll go back. For the past 100 years, he was still worried about the safety of true martial school. It was because the Abyss Demon Lord was too terrifying. It was far more tyrannical than him, who had stepped into the King Realm. Even now, if he were to face the Abyssal Demon Lord, he probably wouldn't be of much use. However, looking at Yi Fengyun's appearance, he knew that the Abyss Devil Lord shouldn't have returned in the past 100 years. The true martial school was also safe. This made him feel a little strange while letting out a sigh of relief. With the strength of the Abyss Devil Lord, who could hurt him? What kind of person could make him not return to the true martial domain until now? Yi Fengyun looked at Yi Shiwen excitedly. However, he also knew that some things should not be asked. It was already a very big surprise and miracle to see Yi Shiwen reborn this time. When everyone thought that Yi Shiwen was dead, it was already a big surprise to see Yi Shiwen again at this time. Yi Shiwen looked at Yi Fengyun. He had just been reborn, and there were still many things waiting for him to do. As he said, he looked at the star beast hidden in the void and said, Go, take me there. You only know how to order me around. Star Beast Avatar kept muttering, but it did not dare to disobey Yi Shiwen's orders. His gigantic figure appeared in the void. This is the Star Beast. Yi Fengyun suddenly looked at the Star Beast in the void with great shock. Regarding the legend of the Star Beast, it could be said that he already knew about it when he entered True Martial School. Especially now that he was also a high level of True Martial School, it was very clear what kind of existence was suppressed in the alien battlefield. It just disappeared together with Yi Shiwen later. It was just that the high level was also silent about this. It was just that they did not expect to see such a shocking scene. Not only did they see the Star Beast, but it was actually subdued by Yi Shiwen. Immediately, his face became excited. This time, Yi Shiwen solved the hidden danger of the Star Beast in one fell swoop. Yi Shiwen had disappeared this time in order to solve the hidden danger of the true Martial University. Only a small number of people in the true Martial University knew about this matter, and he was one of the people who knew about it. He thought that Yi Shiwen had already failed, or both sides were defeated. Who knew that he actually succeeded? He actually succeeded. Thinking of this, he was even more excited. With Yi Shiwen and the protection of the Star Beast, the development of true martial school would be smooth sailing. At this time, Yi Shiwen's figure had disappeared in the universe. Yi Shiwen's expression was extremely solemn. For him, the real hidden danger was still the Abyss Demon Master, whether it was in the ancient Baron's continent or the true martial domain. Although he did not know why the Abyss Demon Master did not return in the past 100 years, he would not be at ease if he could not solve this hidden danger. With his strength, he was afraid that he would not be able to compete with the Abyss Demon Master in a short period of time. In that case, the only way was to find out the reason why the Abyss Demon Master was injured. This was the only method he knew that could restrain the Abyss Demon Master. Who was it that heavily injured the Abyss Demon Master back then? Who was it that made him not dare to stay at all? The Abyss Demon Master was only scared by Huang Wuji, who held the true martial stone sword. What was it that could do this? If he could master this power, he might be able to fight against or even kill the Abyss Demon Master. Initially, he had no clue. However, the sword spirit of the true martial stone sword had given him a direction. That was the battlefield of the deities many tens of thousands of years ago. In this world, if there was an existence that could injure the Abyss Demon Master, it would be the battlefield of the deities. The twilight of the gods. The place where countless deities perished. According to the sword spirit, the strength of the Abyss Demon Master could be considered as the strongest group of people even in the distant past before the world changed. Now, he could not think of anyone in the universe of the true martial domain who had the ability to injure the Abyss Demon Master. Something like a hidden senior was even more unreliable. Although it was only a possibility, there was no difference for Yi Shiwen. This was also his only clue. He did not know about the twilight of the gods and the place where the deities perished. However, the Star Beast knew about it. Its ancestor had personally witnessed the scene of that terrifying war. Through the bloodline inheritance, it had passed down the knowledge of that year. Therefore, this Star Beast knew everything. On the contrary, although Yi Shiwen's body had also integrated with the bloodline of the Star Beast, he did not receive any hint. Obviously, they were not the same ancestor of the Star Beast. The speed of the Star Beast was extremely fast. Among the stars, it could absorb the power of the stars to replenish itself. It rushed all the way to the depths of the universe. Yi Shiwen had been sitting cross-legged on the body of the Star Beast. He closed his eyes and continued to consolidate his realm. The realm of the King Division was a whole new realm for him. This Star Beast was extremely excited and kept roaring. It did not know how many years it had been suppressed. It was suppressed when it was in its prime. It was suppressed when it had just grown to its peak. It had been countless years since then. At this time, it had finally escaped from the cage. Naturally, its heart was extremely excited. With the characteristics of its race, it could travel thousands of miles in a flash in the starry sky. Even so, Yi Shiwen and the Star Beast had walked for more than 3 months in the void of the universe. It seemed like they had reached the end of the sky. Along the way, they had passed through more than a dozen worlds without stopping. If it was the Star Beast, it would definitely devour everything along the way. However, after being controlled by Yi Shiwen, it could not do as it pleased. Under such circumstances, Yi Shiwen finally arrived at a gloomy universe. As soon as Yi Shiwen entered the universe, he realized that this universe was extraordinary. If one were to say that only the transcendent realm and above laws were completely shattered in the outside world, then all the laws here were shattered. Chapter 1724. Generally speaking, when a world and a space-time were created, the laws would accompany it, and then be perfected little by little. Even if the space-time was shattered in a fierce battle, the laws were difficult to be broken. Moreover, even if there were some that could break the laws, they would quickly recover under the effect of higher-level nomological forces. In the true martial domain and other worlds, the laws of the transcendent realm and above were all broken and couldn't be repaired. It was already horrifying enough. In this world, it was even more chaotic and horrifying. As he looked around, he couldn't see any perfect laws. In this chaotic place, the laws comprehended by the celestial realm were completely useless, and it was impossible to use the power of laws to fight. This also showed the difference here. Is this the place where the gods fought back then? Asked Yishuan. And yes, in the battle back then the gods fell. It was really terrifying. Star Beast thought of that scene, and its huge body couldn't help but tremble. It was actually afraid. Star Beast, who had always been fearless, was actually afraid at this time. Even if it was a race that could challenge the Dragon Clan, there was still a huge gap when compared with the gods. It couldn't be calculated with reason at all. Yishuan didn't know what the specific situation of that battle was, but he saw it through the bloodline inheritance. That was truly a battle that could destroy the heavens and the earth. It was so terrifying that it caused him to shudder with fear. It's really terrifying. Yishuan jumped down from Star Beast's body. Countless chi emitted from his feet and lifted him into the air. The laws were broken here. Otherwise, Yishuan could easily fly with the use of the flight law without consuming chi at all. Of course, if he wanted to use demon wings, it would still consume a lot of chi because it was no longer within the scope of the laws. In this place, if you want to fully exert your combat power, unless you have reached the legendary level of verbal law. Otherwise, anyone who comes here will have their combat power sharply reduced. Yishuan's face revealed a somewhat fearful look. Just the situation that he had observed made his heart beat fast. The so-called verbal law meant that once a word was spoken, the laws would naturally be produced, or once a word was spoken, the laws would be distorted, making the flames cold, and so on. However, there weren't many who could reach this level in history. They all had a unified name, and that was God. Was this the battlefield of the gods? A place where laws and natural laws were shattered. How world-shaking was that? But at this time, since he was already here, there was no reason for him to retreat, even though there might be a terrifying existence that could severely injure an abyssal demon master. At this time, the star beast behind him had turned into a middle-aged man. His face was ferocious and incomparably fierce, but he could only obediently follow behind Yishuan. Let's go in and have a look, Yishuan said. He transformed into a streamer and rushed into the battlefield. Star Beast looked at Yishuan, and its eyes flickered a few times. It couldn't help but feel depressed. It naturally didn't want to go into the battlefield to die. The scene in its memory was too terrifying, but it had no other way. If something happened to Yishuan, it would be hard to escape death even if it hit outside. At this time, it was being controlled by Yishuan, and it couldn't do anything to Yishuan. Thinking of this, it could only secretly look at Yishuan with hatred, and then rushed in. Yishuan walked all the way inside, and he became more and more frightened. There were some broken pieces floating in the void. Some were broken pieces of weapons. Some were broken pieces of magic items. However, without exception, all of them exuded an eternally terrifying pressure. Any single one of them could cause the entire primordial era to go crazy. However, Yishuan didn't dare to touch them at this time. He suspected that even if he had entered the king rank, if he really touched these weapon fragments, he might be seriously injured on the spot. He carefully passed through the place where the fragments of weapons and artifacts were floating in the air. These weapon and instrument fragments exuded eternal and powerful coercion. After hundreds of millions of years, it hadn't weakened a bit. This was the eternal power of the god-level instruments. It was these weapons and instrument fragments that were constantly exuding waves of terrifying coercion, hindering the self-repair of these laws. Yishuan looked around. In the middle of this dark universe, there was a shockingly huge boundary. And in the boundary, countless talismans were shining with divine light, and they were constantly seeping out. Waves of terrifying coercion swept out like a storm. Yi Shiwen could only watch from afar. Even if a heaven realm expert was swept by these storms, he would instantly turn into a pile of powder. He couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. What kind of battlefield is this? Roar! 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 Yi Shiwen clearly heard countless terrifying roars from within the boundary. They were trying to penetrate the boundary and directly rush into the depths of Yi Shiwen's heart, shaking him into an idiot. It's really terrifying. What happened in the ancient war? And what is the name of the world that the demon realm and demon realm joined forces to invade? Yi Shiwen had countless questions in his heart, but at this time, he couldn't get any answers at all. Behind him, Star Beast had already caught up and said to him, Yi Shiwen, no matter what, this place is already quite close to the battlefield of the gods. Inside that boundary is most likely the core of the battlefield. We can't get any closer. If we get too close, we may die. Maybe there are still living gods inside. Once we're targeted by those creatures, we're dead for sure. Star Beast never called Yi Shiwen master, but Yi Shiwen never cared about such trivial matters. The life and death of Star Beast were in his hands. Why would he care about such trivial matters? Eh! He suddenly shouted. In his body, a powerful force rushed out. A terrifying force crossed the void and poured into Yi Shiwen's body. My apostle, you're finally here. Hurry up. I want to give you more power to help me break this damn boundary. A loud shout appeared in Yi Shiwen's mind. It wanted to shake Yi Shiwen into an idiot in an instant and seize control of Yi Shiwen's body. At the same time, the Mingxin ancient tree in Yi Shiwen's body constantly spewed out colorful divine light, protecting Yi Shiwen's mind. The huge tree trunk was constantly swaying. Each swaying seemed to conform to some kind of rule. It blocked this force outside Yi Shiwen's sea of consciousness again and again. Who are you? Get out of here! Yi Shiwen shouted coldly. He wanted to expel this power from his body. He was extremely shocked in his heart. He had almost lost his mind to this power. If the enlightening mind ancient tree hadn't woken up at the last moment, Yi Shiwen might not have been able to escape from this calamity. My apostle, do you dare to disobey my orders? Immediately afterward, a more majestic voice appeared. It directly wanted to take over Yi Shiwen's control. The majestic divine power was inviolable. At this time, Yi Shiwen finally remembered. Could this be the deity who had signed a contract with him? That god had actually fallen in this place? He was extremely shocked in his heart. But no matter how shocked he was, he couldn't let this god take over his body. His contract with that god had long been replaced by Yimo. Therefore, he didn't need to listen to this god at all. Previously, he just wanted to get some benefits from it. And now his life might be threatened. How could he sit back and do nothing? When he was about to shake this force out of his body and quickly leave this battlefield, he heard a young man's cold shout coming from the sky. You're still not willing. Immediately afterward, a shocking energy fell from the sky and suddenly landed not far in front of Yi Shiwen. Then, Yi Shiwen suddenly felt that the terrible force that poured into his body had completely dissipated in an instant. His whole body was completely drenched. It was as if he had been fished out of a lake. The situation just now was extremely dangerous. He might have been taken over if he had been a little bit more. How many years has it been? Finally, a second person has come. It's actually a god's messenger. Immediately afterward, the young man's voice came from the sky. In the void, a figure slowly appeared. It was a young man, but this man was dressed in a king's robe. He looked incomparably majestic, as if he was the ruler of the entire world. Yi Shiwen felt as if his soul would fly away and scatter if he were to look at him. The young man glanced at Yi Shiwen and said, Originally, I should have killed you as soon as you became a lackey of the gods. But your body actually has the sword intention of the Sun King. This is a little surprising. The young man didn't seem to care about what Yi Shiwen was thinking. He just talked to himself. Then, he waved his palm, and a sword intention suddenly flew out of Yi Shiwen's body. It was peeled off and fell into the hands of the young king. That is... Yi Shiwen looked at the sword intention. Many years had passed, and he had almost forgotten that this sword intention had saved him many times. It was none other than the sword intention that he had copied from the body of the old man who had transformed from the sword intention in the Devil Commander's tomb in the past. Later, as Yi Shiwen became stronger and stronger, the role of this sword intention became less and less. He almost forgot about it. He didn't expect that it would save him again today. Chapter 17:25. In the void of the universe, a huge figure like a mountain was flying in the sky. Upon closer inspection, it was actually a huge, ferocious beast flying in the void. On the back of this ferocious beast, there were 3 figures standing tall and straight. What a rich spiritual aura! Granduncle, is this the ancient wilderness? On the back of this huge, ferocious beast, a woman exclaimed. Beside her, there was a young man with an excited expression on his face. Yi Shiwen was able to stand on the head of a star giant, but he was extremely shocked. Unknowingly, his thoughts turned to that day. He never expected that the person he met on that day in the deity's battlefield would be one of the 4 human kings of the human race, the first-generation King Taizong. King Taizong was the 3rd peerless king of the human race. Moreover, according to the rumors, King Taizong was 1 step away from the emperor realm. He was known as the first king of the human race since ancient times. However, he mysteriously disappeared in his later years, almost causing the fall of the human race. King Taizong, who suddenly disappeared, became an unsolved mystery for many people. When King Taizong entered the imperial court, he could be said to be the #1 expert at that time. He was also known as the #1 king of the human race since ancient times. Such a powerful being had never appeared again after that brief appearance, and had become one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the human race. Among the 28 noble families, the Yi family had always been close to King Taizong. When King Taizong rose, the ancestors of the Yi family were the first to express their support. Therefore, they received many benefits later on. Originally, they had the opportunity to grow and become one of the top existences in the noble families. However, after King Taizong's fleeting appearance, he suddenly disappeared. Therefore, the Yi clan had the most records about King Taizong. However, Yi Shiwen had never expected that he would see King Taizong in that battlefield. Moreover, he was still alive. If this news were to spread, the entire ancient wilderness would be shocked. King Taizong was not only the #1 expert of the human race, but also the #1 expert of the entire ancient wilderness. Known as the existence closest to the emperor realm, it was undoubtedly great news for the human race to have such an expert overseeing the human race. With King Taizong overseeing the human race, there was no need to be afraid of any demon invasion. However, Yi Shiwen's face revealed a somewhat worried expression. Yi Shiwen returned to the true martial school after the war. He spent some time with his parents, relatives, and friends. Then he returned to the ancient barrens. This time it was different from the previous time. Except for the Abyss Demon Lord who was still high up, he was not afraid of anyone. This time, he brought Yi Fengyun and Yi Xueli along, wanting to nurture the 2 of them. No matter if it was Yi Fengyun or Yi Xueli, they were all peerless geniuses, especially Yi Fengyun. She had already ascended to the transcendent realm within a short period of time. Such progress was even stronger than Yi Shiwen in the past. Although Yi Xueli was only a great sage, her cultivation realm of great sage. That was why he wanted to nurture the 2 of them. This could be considered his second disciple. The first one was Liya, but at that time, they did not have the status of master and disciple. However, Yi Shiwen really hoped that these 2 could grow up so that they could protect the true martial world even if he wasn't here in the future. They had just left the space channel. Yi Xueli was still fine. He was just a great sage. When he was in the true martial domain, he had not yet touched the transcendent realm sky barrier. However, Yi Fengyun had already touched the transcendent realm sky barrier. He faintly felt that there was a strong obstacle preventing him from successfully breaking through to the transcendent realm 2nd level. If he didn't leave, then he would be the same as the other ancestors of the true martial school. He would never be able to cross this boundary. He could only accumulate martial power day after day. This was a kind of sorrow. However, Huang Wuji and the others had already taken root in the true martial world for too long. They couldn't leave. Therefore, Yi Shiwen could only bring Yi Fengyun and Yi Shuili back to the ancient barons. As soon as they came out, they immediately felt a dense spiritual energy rushing towards them. In the distance, a vast and boundless continent appeared in front of them. Both of them were extremely shocked in their hearts. This continent was much bigger than the entire true martial world. Although he was mentally prepared, he was still shocked when he saw it with his own eyes. Ancient barons, ancient barons. A murmur came from Yi Shiwen's side. If one looked closely, they would discover that this young man turned out to be King Taizong. King Taizong stared blankly at the familiar world in front of him. So many years had passed, and he never expected that he would one day be able to return from that battlefield and return to this familiar world. Yi Fengyun and Yi Shuili were already used to the sudden appearance of this young man. During this period, this young man often appeared and disappeared. They couldn't detect it at all. However, seeing that Yi Shiwen didn't have the slightest surprise, they were no longer surprised. According to Yi Shiwen, this was a senior from a long time ago. Since he was a senior, his martial power was naturally far beyond the realm that they could understand. Naturally, there was nothing strange about it. I haven't seen you for many years. Ancient Barons has already undergone earth-shaking changes. Very good, very good. Back then, my clan didn't fall into the realm of slavery because of me. King Taizong had a handsome face. He had the appearance of a young man, but his words were full of vicissitudes. If Senior hadn't suppressed that battlefield back then, I'm afraid that the ancient barons would have been slaughtered. No matter what, Senior has done a great favor to the human race and the ancient barons. Yi Shiwen said. His tone was dull, but it revealed a kind of respect. No matter what King Taizong had done in his life was worthy of his admiration. Now, the ancient barons is the world of you young people. I just did some things. It's nothing. The ones who truly protected the ancient barons and the survival of my clan are you. King Taizong said with a smile. His smile was incomparably old. It's all thanks to you that I can come back this time. Back then, I didn't expect that a genius like you would appear in the Yi clan. His eyes were deep, as if he had seen through the river of time, and saw his incomparably glorious era. The Yi clan's clan lord was his right-hand man in those days. The star beast under his feet was extremely respectful. It was not as impatient as it was when it was under Yi Shiwen's command. At your age, you have already entered the stage of king grade. You can already be regarded as a genius. Even in my era, you are already a peerless genius. However, if you want to break through and enter the next realm, you still need to understand one thing. The mystery of life and death is the key to breaking through the next realm. If you can understand the yin-yang life and death diagram in your body, there is a possibility of breaking through to the next realm. King Taizong inadvertently pointed out. Thank you, Senior, for your guidance. Yi Shiwen's face also showed a somewhat grateful expression. Then, King Taizong stepped on the star beast under his feet and said, although I can see that you are not very willing, but if you can sincerely assist Yi Shiwen, the day he achieves Tao in the future will be the day of your success. Do you understand? Understood. The star beast under his feet said in a muffled voice, not daring to be disrespectful at all. However, at this time, the star beast's pace was extremely fast. In just an instant, it had already arrived at the border of the ancient barons' continent, the border gate. In order to not scare anyone, the star beast directly shrank its figure and turned into a size of only 10 meters. Although it was still huge, it was no longer that big. In the ancient barons, the truly huge, vicious beasts were not known to be thousands of meters long. They were incomparably huge. However, Yi Shiwen discovered a problem all of a sudden. The originally flourishing border gate was now empty. It was deathly silent. This wasn't caused by the passing of the Abyss Devil Lord last time. Even if the border gate couldn't restore its former glory and prosperity in the last 100 years, it shouldn't be in such a state of deathly stillness. Yi Shiwen's divine senses swept out, and he could see broken buildings everywhere. It was obvious that the destruction was not too long ago. It should not be more than 50 years ago. It was definitely not caused by the Abyss Demon Lord. what's going on? Yi Fengyun and King Taizong looked at the empty border gate in shock. This was completely different from the prosperous ancient barons' continent that they had imagined. In their imagination, the ancient barons' continent should be extremely prosperous, an existence that was 100 or 1,000 times more prosperous than the true martial domain. Yi Xuan had mentioned this before. However, what were they seeing now? Everywhere was an incomparably dilapidated scene. It had nothing to do with the extremely prosperous scene that they had imagined. "This is clearly cleaned up by someone," said Yi Xuan with a frown. King Taizong, who was beside him, had already become solemn. I've met a few more humans. From time to time, I would meet humans who had ascended from various small worlds. I can capture them all and make them my slaves." Suddenly, a strange laughter came from the void. It was a middle-aged man with 2 long, golden horns on his head. He was only in the law manifestation realm, but he was extremely arrogant. When he looked at Yi Xuan and the others, his face was filled with incomparable greed, as if he had seen incomparable wealth. "I advise you to hand over all your savings obediently and become my slaves. You should be glad that you didn't meet the Demon Clan or the Demon Clan. Otherwise, you wouldn't just be slaves. You would be eaten." The middle-aged man kept talking to himself. As he spoke, he directly clawed at Yi Xuan and the others. "Impudent!" Yi Xuan snorted coldly. He took a step forward and slapped. Prunk! The middle-aged man was sent flying by the slap, and blood splattered in the void. Chapter 17:26. Who do you think you are? How dare you hunt humans? I think you must be tired of living. Yi Xuan sneered. You? At this moment, this person finally knew that he seemed to have kicked an iron plate. He was extremely shocked. How is this possible? The humans that ascended from various small worlds would at most be in the transcendent realm. Even if they were stronger, it would be fine if there were 1 or 2 law manifestation realm experts. How could he be so powerful? He actually sent me flying with just a slap. This was another human powerhouse. In the current world, such people were hard to find. Yi Xuan took a step forward. He spread out his hand and suddenly grabbed the warrior's neck. Then he said directly, "People of the 100 Clan Alliance. Although this area is indeed the border between the Human Clan and the 100 Clan Alliance, if I remember correctly, this should be the Human Clan's territory. How dare you hunt humans here? Are you tired of living?" Yi Xueli, who was at the side, was not afraid when she saw Yi Xuan's expression. On the contrary, her face was flushed with excitement. It was so satisfying. From what this guy said just now, he actually wanted to hunt the Human Clan. How could she not be angry? "Senior, this is a misunderstanding. It's really a misunderstanding." The 100 Clan Alliance warrior's neck was firmly grasped by Yi Xuan. He couldn't exert any strength at all. How could he not admit defeat at this time? Misunderstanding? I'd like to see what kind of misunderstanding there is. Yi Xuan sneered. "We didn't do this here. Perhaps Senior has been living in seclusion in the small world for too long. You don't know that this place was actually completely destroyed more than 20 years ago. Over these years, after the Human Clan Royal Court was breached by the Demon Clan, it has long been holed up in Mount Qi," said the 100 Clan Alliance warrior, while trembling. "Nonsense. How is this possible? How can the Royal Court be breached?" said Yi Xuan in disbelief. Even King Taizong's eyes instantly burst with a terrifying radiance. Imperial Court for the Human Clan in remote antiquity. What did Imperial Court mean? It was simply indescribable. However, ever since Sun King established Imperial Court had never been breached, no matter how great the Human Clan's crisis was, including the last time when the Demon Clan invaded. Even a powerful existence like the Abyssal Demon King couldn't do anything to the Royal Court. The battle could only end in a stalemate. How could the Royal Court be breached? "Senior," the 100 Races Alliance martial artist instantly felt 2 frightening auras crushing down upon him, as if they were about to crush him to death. "What I said is true. 30 years ago, the Abyssal Demon Lord personally took action. Later on, the Wang family of the human race's noble clan rebelled and joined the Abyssal Demon Lord. They personally opened up the Royal Court's defensive line. On that day, the Royal Court was breached and collapsed 1,000 miles away. At that time, countless human experts in the royal court died in battle. Not a single one was able to escape. The martial artist of the Hundred Races Alliance spoke with increasing difficulty. What? King Taizong was incomparably shocked. He had just returned to the ancient desolate era, and the first thing he heard was that the king's court had been breached. What about the Yi family? Yi Xuan immediately asked. I'm not sure either, but they should all be dead. At that time, in the royal court, except for the Wang family, almost everyone else was killed in battle. All these years, under the encirclement of the demon race army, only the 4 royal clans were able to barely hold on. More than half of the other noble clans have been destroyed. Senior, what I said is true. You must believe me. That's all I know. I just wanted to capture some human slaves to sell. The demon race and demon race are far more ferocious than we are. Almost all the humans that fell into their hands became their food. On the day that the royal court was breached, the sea race also began to massacre the human forces in the sea region. Blood flowed like a river, and there were countless casualties. In order to absolve himself of his crime, he had already said everything. He had even specifically mentioned the crimes of the other clans in order to reduce his own crime. Good, very good. King Taizong was already extremely angry at this time. His face was already pale. If that's the case, then go to hell. Yi Xuan did not have the slightest intention of letting him go. Before him, who knew how many young talents of the human race had been captured by this guy and sold as slaves. He deserved it. Even death was not to be regretted. Ah, you can't go back on your words. You will have retribution. Retribution. Right now, there are countless people waiting to kill the human race in the desolate era. You will definitely have retribution. The martial artist of the Hundred Races Alliance kept roaring and roaring as he struggled. But how could he keep up with Yi Xuan? He directly stepped out with 1 foot on the spot, and the warrior of the 100-clan alliance in the Law Phase realm was directly crushed into pieces. Blood splattered everywhere, and he died on the spot. I'd like to see how many people are waiting to kill the human race. Yi Xuan said indifferently. How did it become like this? Yi Xuan was incomparably shocked. 100 years, in just 100 years, things had turned out like this. The imperial court had been breached, and the human race, which was originally one of the major races, had been reduced to blood, food, and slaves. Could it be that the tragic years of the human race in ancient times were going to repeat themselves? Damn the Wang clan, Yi Xuan angrily rebuked. He had just captured a key piece of information, and that was that the Wang clan had opened the royal court's defense line, which allowed the devil race army to march straight in, and finally successfully breach the royal court. He had never been so angry before. Although he had a grudge with the Wang clan, he had never thought that the Wang clan would actually do such a thing. What a bunch of evildoers, King Taizong said angrily. I didn't expect the Wang clan to have such a vile descendant. How many of their ancestors fought for the rise of the human race? But in the end, such a vile descendant appeared among their descendants. When a king was angry, the sky and earth changed color. In an instant, countless chilly winds blew between heaven and earth, whistling over. Yi Fengyun and Yi Shuli finally understood at this time why Yi Xuan was so respectful to King Taizong. This terrifying strength was simply unheard of and unseen. Let's go. I'd like to see how many people are still waiting to hunt down our human race. At this time, King Taizong directly strode out, undoubtedly revealing his kingly demeanor. He had not revealed his strength all along, just like an ordinary teenager. Once he attacked, his strength was extremely terrifying. Wherever King Taizong passed, the experts of the 100-clan alliance and the demon race who were waiting to hunt down the human race near the border immediately self-destructed on the spot. They did not even have the time to react to what was going on. Yi Xuan and the others followed behind one after another. This movement immediately alarmed countless people in the distance. This was not the only number of experts wandering around this area. These people did not recognize King Taizong in person, but they could recognize Yi Xuan. Who is that? Why do I feel like I've seen that man somewhere before? I also have a feeling of déjà vu. Could it be that I've seen him somewhere before? Where did such a fierce and invincible human come from? Could it be? The monstrous genius of the Yi clan from more than 100 years ago. Yi Shiwen? Unbelievable. It's really him. I almost thought that I was mistaken. Back then, he was injured by the Jiuying Demon King and the Abyss Devil Lord. After that, he did not appear for more than 100 years. Wasn't it said that he had fallen? That's right, that's right. It's him. Back then, his strength was extremely tyrannical, and he was invincible among his peers. Even the special envoy of the ancient Phoenix realm was defeated by him. For a moment, everyone was shocked. At first, no one remembered him. After all, not to mention the glory of the human race in the past, it was extremely difficult for them to even protect themselves. Reality was cruel. Seeing that the human race was on the verge of decline, who would still remember the outstanding genius of the human race back then? However, when they really remembered him from their dusty memories, it was like a hurricane that swept across the entire battlefield. Back then, many people sighed for Yi Shiwen's fall. It was such a pity that such a person had fallen just like that. Everyone could see that colluding with the demon race was just an excuse. The real reason was the sacrifice that the human race had made to form an alliance with the other races. At that time, it had indeed facilitated the alliance of several major races. However, when the human royal court was breached and a massive number of experts died tragically, the demon world's passageways that were suppressed by the various aristocratic families were also breached. A large number of demon race swarmed in, and countless humans were slaughtered. When the other races saw that the human race no longer had any value, they immediately tore up the agreement. Not only did they not fulfill their responsibilities as allies, but they also continued to hit the human race while they were down, encroaching on the human race's territory. After a few decades, the human race seemed to have fallen completely. The elites that dominated the world back then had all fallen overnight. They had directly shed all pretenses of cordiality. Between the various races, the so-called alliance didn't exist at all. Only with great strength could one guarantee the implementation. Granduncle is so powerful. Even in the ancient Barrens continent, where there are so many experts, so many people know of him. Yi Shuili looked at Yi Shiwen with some admiration. To her, everything in the ancient Barrens continent was still so novel and magical. It was simply like a place from the legends. Just like the guy that Yi Shiwen casually killed just now. He was much stronger than the strongest expert in her memory, Granduncle Huang Wuji. When the surrounding voices fell into her ears, she was filled with admiration. Yi Shuili was incomparably shocked. How could Yi Fengyan not be the same? She was filled with passion. More than 200 years ago, her granduncle also came to the ancient barrens like this. However, more than 200 years later, he had already become a famous figure in the ancient barrens. Without coming to the ancient barrens, it was impossible to imagine how great Yi Shiwen's reputation was. Even after more than 200 years, it was still imprinted in the hearts of the people. Chapter 17:27. It's only been over 100 years, but he seems to be even stronger than before. Could he have already entered the celestial realm? No, he was already able to kill celestial realm experts over 100 years ago. Many people began to discuss. However, the news of Yi Shiwen's return also began to spread throughout the ancient wilderness at a shocking speed. Some people hated him to the core, while others were extremely surprised by his return. This news immediately began to spread in the ancient wilderness. Although it was nothing to the overall situation of the ancient wilderness, for some people, Yi Shiwen's return was undoubtedly an earth-shattering event, especially many people who had a grudge against Yi Shiwen. At this time, their expressions turned serious. There were also some experts from other clans who wanted to kill the human race. They couldn't bear to see such a talent return. Back then, Yi Shiwen was already very strong. Even celestial realm experts were no match for him. Now, he was definitely much stronger than he was 100 years ago. The return of such a person might not be a good thing for the various clans. But soon, some other rumors came out. They said that Yi Shiwen's martial power wasn't as tyrannical as it used to be. He had disappeared for hundreds of years. He had been seriously injured by the Jiuying Demon King and the Abyss Devil Master. It was good enough that he had survived. Not to mention, his martial power had improved. He was definitely not as strong as many people thought he was. However, Yi Shiwen's return had still attracted the attention of many people. It didn't matter whether he had the same martial power as back then, or whether he had made further progress. His existence was already a huge threat, especially those who had besieged him back then. At this time, they even began to take action. In the north of the ancient wilderness, on a huge mountain peak, there were many tents. It was a place where the demon race had stationed their troops. And in this tent, in the most luxurious one, a person sat on a throne in the tent. Countless auras gathered around him, turning into laws. Clearly, he had comprehended the laws to an extremely profound level. This was a young man in a royal robe. He suddenly opened his eyes, which were like two beams of light that shot straight into the sky. That Yi Shiwen actually dared to return? He was incomparably cold, and his expression did not change at all. Your Highness, that's right, it's Yi Shiwen. Our nine-headed infant tribe spies have already confirmed it. That Yi Shiwen swaggered him without any disguise. It's been confirmed. At this time, a voice beside him said, "How strong is it? Did you find out?" The young man in the royal robe continued, "I don't know. The various powers are all watching." An initial celestial realm expert attacked and was easily crushed by him. Even if his strength didn't improve during these 100 years, it shouldn't have regressed much. That voice continued, "Good, very good." The young man sneered and said, "Should we report this to the king?" The voice asked, "There's no need. He's just a cripple from 100 years ago. If he's really fine, then there's no need to spend 100 years. So what if he's improved again?" The youth in the royal robe sneered. Other people might not be clear about the situation that year, but how could our nine-headed infant race not know? He could kill a peak celestial realm expert not because of his own strength, but because of a weird artifact. That artifact was destroyed by the Abyss Demon Lord. What is he now? In 100 years, how much can he improve? Even if he is at peak celestial realm, I can easily crush him to death. The young man in the royal robe said in disdain. The young man in the royal robe said disdainfully, "There are no heroes in this era. That's why people become famous. This guy only has an undeserved reputation. Some ignorant people actually praised him as the #1 person in the younger generation. Humph, he's just a cripple from 100 years ago. I'll let everyone know that the person who is truly worthy of being the #1 person in the younger generation is none other than me. Back then, he didn't meet me, otherwise he'd be dead. However, it's not too late now. It's time to correct a wrong saying that has spread for 100 years. The young man's face was filled with fighting spirit. That year, Yi Shiwen displayed shocking strength. Most of the young generation were only at initial and middle celestial realm. At most, there were a few who were at late celestial realm, but he could already destroy peak celestial realm experts. Although he fled in defeat and no one knew if he was dead or alive, to many people, this was enough to prove that he was the top of the young generation. Even after hundreds of years, the younger generation had already stepped into extremely profound realms. Even the older generation wasn't a match for them. However, there was still some truth to this statement. There were still some people who firmly believed that Yi Shiwen wasn't that simple. However, how many of the young generation were willing to accept this? Why did Yi Shiwen have to be above them? That was a matter from 100 years ago. However, that battle back then had been a disgrace for many kings. So many experts had let Yi Shiwen escape in the end. So, this matter had become a taboo for them. So many people in the outside world weren't very clear about it. And those who knew the truth were even more unconvinced. Back then, he was just a person who hadn't even reached celestial realm. What qualifications did he have to be above them? If I don't kill this guy, there's no need to alarm Father about this matter. Father now has to contact the various clans about the alliance, and he also has to face the demon clan's pressure step by step. Let me handle this kind of trivial matter. Now the decline of the human race is a foregone conclusion. Without the human race at the forefront, we have to bear the brunt of the demon clan's iron cavalry. When I leave, the matters in this military camp will be handed over to you, he said indifferently. Before his voice fell, his figure had already disappeared into the air. He didn't die 100 years ago. Now let me kill him." In the encampment of the North Mountain clan, hearing the news of Yi Shiwen's return, Yi Shiwen, who had been almost forgotten, suddenly entered the hearts of the North Mountain clan at this time. Many of the younger generation clamored to kill him. Back then, Yi Shiwen directly killed the patriarch of the North Mountain clan. Although he was only a puppet, he was still the patriarch of the North Mountain clan after all. At that time, the human race was still very powerful, so no one could do anything to Yi Shiwen. But now, the human race had declined. Let's see who can still protect Yi Shiwen. And under such circumstances, a young war god of the North Mountain clan seized this opportunity to kill Yi Shiwen. For some people, Yi Shiwen was the strongest of the younger generation in their hearts. If they couldn't kill Yi Shiwen, they couldn't change the impression in these people's hearts. In other words, this was also a battle to compete for the strongest. Even if it was a siege to kill Yi Shiwen, only the strongest was qualified to participate. Other trash was not qualified to participate at all. Beishan Yu, the newly rising peerless genius of the North Mountain clan. Although he debuted much later than Yi Shiwen and the others, he rose rapidly in a short period of time, defeating countless masters of the younger generation of the North Mountain clan. Now he was the strongest of the younger generation of the North Mountain clan. Yi Shiwen of the human clan is back. In the royal court, a strong Azura suddenly opened his eyes and stood up from the endless demonic flames. This kind of demonic flame was originally used by the demon clan to torture prisoners. No matter what kind of person, under the burning of this kind of demonic flame, it was impossible to persevere. But this Azura actually used this kind of demonic flame as a means to train his physical body. One could imagine how powerful it was. I have heard of the name Yi Shiwen a long time ago. Now, if even he dies in the hands of our demon clan, let's see how many humans still have the heart to resist. As he spoke, he stepped out gracefully and disappeared into the void. Not only this Azura powerhouse, but many powerhouses in the demon clan were suddenly alarmed because everyone knew that Yi Shiwen had the yin-yang life and death diagram on him. This was a fragment of a magic tool that the Abyss Demon Lord had always wanted. Once he obtained the yin-yang life and death diagram, the Abyss Demon Lord's strength would advance by leaps and bounds, and there would be a huge change. This was the thought of those who were loyal to the Abyss Demon Lord. There were also some people who were not loyal to the Abyss Demon Lord, but they also coveted the yin-yang life and death diagram on Yi Shiwen's body. This was a magic tool that even the Abyss Demon Lord coveted. If they could also obtain it, then it was possible for them to leap to the level of the Abyss Demon Lord. All kinds of ambitious people were breeding. Yi Shiwen had just appeared, and it immediately caused a commotion in the entire demon clan. Even if the Abyss Demon Lord had not spoken, they had already moved one after another. In the Qi Mountain, a beautiful place with mountains and rivers had already been condensed by the chilling atmosphere. The brows of a tall and sturdy man suddenly became solemn. Yi Shiwen is back? That's great. Someone wants to touch him? Daring to touch my brother. I think they are tired of living. It just so happens that I want to see how powerful the heavens' prides of other clans are. Do they really think that after our human clans suffered heavy losses, there is not a single person left? This tall and strong man was Yi Fan. After he was accepted as a disciple by the mysterious ancestor of the Yi clan, he had been in a state of closed-door training, tempering himself. If it was not because of the heavy losses of the Yi clan's powerhouses, he might still be in closed-door training. However, compared to hundreds of years ago, his strength was already very different from before. Yi Fan snorted coldly and directly stepped into a light and disappeared into the sky. Chapter 1728. The entire ancient barons was in an uproar because of Yi Shiwen's return. In the eyes of many people, his return was the top priority. Several large clans that could dominate the entire ancient barons were mobilized because of Yi Shiwen. Many people were rushing towards Yi Shiwen from all directions. Yi Shiwen didn't care about them. On the contrary, he slowed down as if he was waiting for those people to arrive. He killed along the way. The situation of the entire ancient Barrens continent was much worse than he had expected. The human race occupied the most central area of the entire ancient Barrens, and the heartland of the human race was the Chi Mountain region. With the collapse of the royal court, countless individual cultivator forces were uprooted. Many marquee clans were uprooted as well. In the current ancient Barrens, apart from some territories of the various marquee clans, only the Chi Mountain region had become the greatest protection of the human race due to the existence of several forces. It was also the last territory of the human race. It was also the last area where the demon race was besieging. The human race had taken root in this land for many years. In just a few decades, although the major forces had been defeated, it didn't mean that the human race no longer existed in the human race's territory. On the contrary, there were still many humans living in the human race's territory, struggling to survive. Not all forces had the ability to travel thousands of miles to the Chi Mountain region. Most of the forces were either annihilated or stayed behind to defend. In the past few decades, the human race's casualties were estimated to be more than half. However, they were still stubbornly surviving. Back then, the human race had an uncountable number of hundreds of millions of people. Now more than half of them had been lost. One could imagine how much they had lost in the past few decades. The foundation of the human race was among these ordinary people. The future of the human race was also among these ordinary people. Therefore, they had been killing along the way. Be it the Oceanids, the Hundred Races Alliance, the demons, or the demons, anyone who wreaked havoc in human territory was killed. Along the way, blood flowed like a river. These alien races were used to being arrogant in the human race territory. At this time, the human race was unable to block the final attack of the demon race, so they could only let them do what they wanted. Who knew that they would be ambushed at this time? No matter how many people there were, how strong the opponents were, even the celestial realm old ancestor was slapped to death. None of them were able to escape. Under such circumstances, Yi Shiwen's speed had suddenly dropped a lot, and he was quickly overtaken by those people with ulterior motives. The first to arrive was none other than the eldest prince of the Jiuying Demon King. This tyrannical young expert crossed the sky, bringing with him a rumbling sound, like a thunderclap exploding. He brought with him a murderous aura that filled the sky, forming layers of murderous clouds in the sky. The murderous aura was monstrous and ominous. This murderous aura turned into an unparalleled pressure, directly crushing Yi Shiwen and the others. However, it was of no use. Although Yi Fengyan and Yi Shuili's cultivation was still very low, with the star beast blocking the pressure, it did not affect them at all. Yi Shiwen, you were lucky to escape last time. Today, you won't be able to escape. The eldest prince of the Jiuying Demon King sneered and said, "After today, everyone will know that I can only be the number one person in the younger generation, and you are just a joke." In the face of the provocation of the eldest prince of the Jiuying Demon King, Yi Shiwen did not move. The eldest prince of the Jiuying Demon King came alone, showing his absolute strength. In terms of strength, he had probably already entered the peak of the celestial realm. With such strength, unless he met the masters of the major forces or masters of the king grade, it was indeed difficult to meet an opponent. Seeing that Yi Shiwen ignored him, the eldest prince of the Jiuying Demon King could not help but sneer. He directly broke through the sky with his spear, instantly shattering the void and directly piercing Yi Shiwen's head. At this time, Yi Shiwen finally moved. He directly spread out his hand, and his palm met the sky full of spear radiance. Dang! A loud bang sounded, and terrifying power instantly splashed out from the point of collision, and the void was forcibly pierced. Countless people in the distance sucked in a cold breath. Yi Shiwen and the others were so high profile that they had long attracted the attention of countless people. Although these people did not dare to casually approach, even looking from afar, they still felt extremely shocked. The eldest prince of the Jiuying Demon King attacked with all his strength, shaking the entire universe, but still could not break through Yi Shiwen's palm. Right now, among the clans that slaughtered the most humans, the Jiuying clan is also one of them, Yi Shiwen said expressionlessly. So what if I am? Do you still think that the human race is still the big clan that it was many years ago? The eldest prince of the Joeying Demon King said disdainfully, not taking Yi Shiwen seriously at all. The strength of the eldest prince of the Joeying Demon King was extremely terrifying. Instantly, a sky full of spear radiance shot out from his spear. It was unbelievably fast, and this long spear was already at the level of an ultimate weapon. It was indeed very difficult to find a worthy opponent among the same generation, but unfortunately, he met Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen reached out with one hand and directly pushed aside the sky full of spear radiance shot out from the long spear, and directly swept the spear radiance into pieces. Then, he directly punched out. Boom! There were no fancy moves, just a simple punch. However, its power was terrifying. Like a meteor, it pierced through the sky and instantly landed on the body of the first prince of the nine-headed fierce, snake-headed Demon King. Boom! The eldest prince of the Joeying Demon King was hit on the spot, and then his entire body suddenly exploded into pieces, and blood splattered in the void. One move, just one simple move, and the eldest prince of the Joeying Demon King was directly killed. So strong, one move, just one move, and he directly killed a peak celestial realm expert like he was taking a stroll in the park. This Yi Shiwen's strength is really too terrifying. This Yi Shiwen, the human race is going to have another ultimate warrior. For the human race, which is in a precarious situation, this is also a good thing. But that also depends on him being able to survive in the end. Now that so many experts have rushed over, how many can he fight? Countless experts around were in disbelief. To Yi Shiwen, who had actually stepped into the king tier, the eldest prince of the Joeying Demon King was simply as weak as a baby. It was just like when Yi Shiwen faced the Joeying Demon King back then, he had no way to fight back at all. Even in a situation where he was wearing a mecha, he was still completely injured by one shot. After beheading the eldest prince of the nine-headed Demon King, Yi Shiwen was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he grabbed the body of the nine-headed snake monster, which had already reverted to its original form, and crushed it into pieces on the spot. Then, the blood and essence of the snake monster directly poured into the bodies of Yi Fengyun and Yi Xueli. During this period of time, Yi Shiwen killed along the way, and also encountered some weak foreign race warriors, but these were also left to Yi Fengyun and Yi Xueli to deal with. These two had also experienced a lot of life and death battles and escaped from death many times. Because of Yi Shiwen's support, the two were especially open. As long as they did not die immediately, with Yi Shiwen's Phoenix regeneration technique, they could immediately recover no matter how serious their injuries were. Therefore, during this period of time, they also improved very quickly. The blood essence of a celestial realm peak was huge. Even if it was divided into two equal parts, it was still abnormally huge. Yi Shiwen helped them digest a part of the blood essence, and the rest was sealed in their bodies with the seal technique. In the future, when they needed it when they advanced, it could quickly gush out. With this blood essence in their bodies, it was imaginable how rapid their progress would be. Compared to when Yi Shiwen had just entered the ancient Barrens continent, it was much better. As the saying goes, the predecessor planted the tree, and the posterity enjoyed the shade. After absorbing this blood essence, Yi Fengyun broke through all the way to the Transcendent Realm 3rd level. This was to prevent the unstable foundation from breaking through continuously. Otherwise, she could even rush all the way to the Transcendent Realm 9th level. If it was Huang Wuji, with his deep foundation, he could definitely rush all the way to the Transcendent Realm 9th level without worrying about the unstable foundation. Although Yi Xueli was not as exaggerated as Yi Fengyun, she had already broken through all the way to the Great Sage Realm Great Perfection, and even attracted the Transcendent Realm Heaven's Retribution directly. Originally, for the Great Sage Realm warriors, the Transcendent Realm Heaven's Retribution was the most terrifying Heaven's Retribution. The Transcendent Realm Heaven's Retribution meant that this creature bid farewell to the mortal world. From then on, it transcended the mortal world. Its body would become the most perfect, and its lifespan would be greatly extended. Therefore, this heaven's retribution was very difficult to pass. However, with Yi Shiwen guarding by the side, these were naturally not a problem. After just half a day, she had completely passed the transcendent realm heaven's retribution. She directly stepped into the transcendent realm. After Yi Shiwen had passed through the transcendent realm's heaven's retribution, the next wave of people had arrived. This wave consisted of experts from the 100 Clan Alliance, led by a young expert with a dignified appearance. His aura was sharp, just like an unsheathed sword. Compared to the 9-headed fierce beast king, he was not inferior at all. It was Beishan Yu, the strongest among the younger generation of the Beishan clan. In a short period of time, he was able to defeat many seniors as a junior. His talent naturally went without saying. A large number of Heaven Realm experts followed Beishan Yu. There were experts from various clans in the 100 Clan Alliance. A large number of people surrounded Yi Shiwen and the others. Chapter 17:29. These were all experts above the celestial realm, and they were all leaders of the major forces. But at this time, they were all gathered together just to besiege Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen, you murderous demon king, you have killed so many geniuses of our North Mountain clan. Today, it is time for you to pay with your blood. Beishan Yu roared. I want to see how many geniuses your North Mountain clan has for me to kill. Yi Shiwen sneered. As he spoke, Yi Shiwen had already rushed directly into these figures, leaving only an afterimage. He rushed in single-handedly, ferocious like a thunderbolt, and slammed his palm directly towards Beishan Yu. How dare you? Arrogant. You actually dare to use one person to charge at so many of us. No matter how strong your cultivation is, you have to die. I want to see how you die. These people saw Yi Shiwen suddenly rush in, and they couldn't help but be startled, but then they all began to curse. Yi Shiwen actually dared to rush in. He was simply not putting them in his eyes. Pung! Before they finished speaking, a celestial realm expert of the 100 Races Alliance was directly pierced by Yi Shiwen's hand, and his entire spirit was instantly crushed. Clean and crisp, cold and merciless. Only then did everyone finally react, and they all began to pounce towards him. In an instant, dozens of terrifying attacks directly blasted towards Yi Shiwen, wanting to directly kill him. Yi Shiwen was like a dragonfly skimming the water. A large hand swept out a sky full of golden light, instantly sweeping away all these attacks. Pong! Everyone's eyes blurred, and another celestial realm expert's head was directly blown up by Yi Shiwen. Blood splattered everywhere, and he had no strength to fight back. The entire world was silent, extremely quiet, deathly silent. Everyone was stunned. Yi Shiwen easily blew up 2 celestial realm experts in succession. Everyone seemed to have seen a ghost. Some people might have gotten the news that Yi Shiwen had killed celestial realm experts on the way here, but the battle report didn't mention in detail how he killed them. That was why these celestial realm experts dared to come together. In their opinion, with so many people, no matter how arrogant Yi Shiwen was, it was useless. However, he didn't expect that he wouldn't even be able to withstand a single move from Yi Shiwen. All eyes were suddenly fixed on Yi Shiwen. How long has it been since we last met? How did he become so strong? Everyone's mind was like a clap of thunder, rumbling incessantly. Everyone found that they seemed to have underestimated Yi Shiwen. At this moment, they seemed to recall Yi Shiwen's reputation from before. He was extremely ruthless, and they also wanted to retreat in their hearts. In just 2 moves, 2 Heaven Realm experts fell. This was just too terrifying, and it sent chills down one's spine. Yi Shiwen's body stood tall in the void like a deity overlooking the world. Bang! While everyone was stunned, Yi Shiwen didn't stop at all, directly blowing up another Heaven Realm expert. Damn it, how could this be? Go, kill the 2 brats behind him first. At this time, someone reacted and instantly flew toward Yi Fengyun and Yi Shiwen on the Star Beast. In their eyes, those 2 were just ants that could be casually squashed to death. However, Yi Shiwen didn't move at all, as if he didn't see it. Just when they thought that their trick had succeeded, they saw a giant beast claw grow bigger, and bigger in the void. In an instant, these experts of the 100-race alliance who pounced over seemed to have sent themselves to their doorstep. They were directly pierced through and couldn't retaliate at all. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Those were Heaven Realm experts, and their reaction speed was naturally extremely fast. What kind of person could make them unable to react at all and be pierced through? It was completely unbelievable. TSK, do you really think I'm a vegetarian? The star beast laughed coldly, as if very dissatisfied with being looked down upon. Then, it swallowed all the corpses in one gulp. Heaven Realm experts were simply like ants in its eyes. It could casually crush a group of them. Even though it was still far from its peak state, it was still not something that these people could casually compare to. That demonic beast is actually so powerful. Many people who were watching the battle from afar felt a chill running down their spines. Many of them wanted to kill Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen was very strong. However, there were too many people in the entire ancient wilderness who didn't like him. So, there would always be a way to exchange for a generous reward if they killed him. However, they didn't expect that not only was Yi Shiwen so amazing, but even a random beast that he brought with him was so tyrannical and terrifying. Where did he find such a beast? It actually killed Heaven Realm experts so easily. Many people looked at this scene in shock. For the first time, everyone had a deeper guess about Yi Shiwen's background. Originally, they thought that Yi Shiwen's background was the Yi family. However, the Yi family had long suffered heavy losses. How could they still be Yi Shiwen's foundation and background? In other words, Yi Shiwen had another background. Many people also remembered that it had only been a mere 200 years since Yi Shiwen appeared in the ancient wilderness, and he had already grown to this point. One could imagine how amazing his speed was. If he didn't have any other background, it didn't seem like it no matter how they looked at it. Everyone was thinking about what kind of adventure Yi Shiwen had in the past 100 years. Not only did he survive, but his skills didn't regress. Instead, he made amazing progress. Boom! 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 The star beast didn't continue to attack, but Yi Shiwen didn't stop at all. Instead, he continued to kill into the crowd. With a casual attack, with a raise of his hand or a kick, a Heaven Realm expert would be blown up. There were people from all races in the 100-clan alliance, but they were all the same. They were no match for Yi Shiwen at all. In just a moment, several Heaven Realm experts had been killed. And at this time, Beishan Yu finally couldn't hold back and made a move. He blasted out a 5-colored divine light, sweeping up endless fist energy. It twisted and blasted towards the back of Yi Shiwen's head with lightning speed. He took the initiative to attack, taking advantage of Yi Shiwen killing a Heaven Realm expert to directly attack. Yi Shiwen didn't even look. A pair of demon wings spread out behind him, instantly protecting him. Boom! Yi Shiwen's demon wings emitted an incomparably loud rumbling sound. Then, a 5-colored divine radiance splashed out from his demon wings, and countless rays of divine radiance splashed out. Immediately after, Yi Shiwen turned around and blasted Beishan Yu with a punch. He was like a piece of paper, not a match for Yi Shiwen at all. The gap between an ordinary peak Heaven Realm expert and a king rank expert was so huge. It was like heaven and earth. Only when Yi Shiwen truly stepped into the king rank of the peak Heaven Realm expert could he truly feel the gap. At the start, he couldn't understand why there would be such a huge gap when they were both at the peak of celestial being realm. That was a terrifying existence that could reign supreme in this realm. Someone who was invincible and just a little bit away from stepping into the next realm. Beishan Yu couldn't dodge at all, and blood splattered everywhere. Apart from him, the other experts of the 100-clan alliance were also slaughtered in a moment. Although some people saw that the situation was not good and wanted to retreat, how could they keep up with Yi Shiwen's speed? They couldn't escape at all. Yi Shiwen caught up to them in an instant and slaughtered them all. Finally, Yi Shiwen's ferocious prowess completely alarmed the entire remote antiquity. Among the people he killed, there was no lack of Beishan Yu. The Jiuying Demon King First Prince, who had already stepped into the peak of the celestial realm and had hopes of stepping into the king rank in the future, was no match for Yi Shiwen at all. He was directly killed by a single punch. Many people guessed that he had already stepped into the king rank, Otherwise, how could he be so terrifying? Such a rumor quickly stunned many people. Many people who originally wanted to find trouble with Yi Shiwen suddenly stopped in their tracks. They considered whether they had such strength. Regardless of whether he had the strength of the king rank or not, from the situation of several consecutive battles, even a peak heaven realm expert would not be a match for him. Therefore, to be a match for him, one could only be a master at the king rank. There was no doubt about this. And the experts who had not reached the king rank, at this time, all suddenly became well-behaved. Although they wanted to kill Yi Shiwen, they were not fools. How could they not know the severity of the situation? Even those who were originally clamoring to kill Yi Shiwen suddenly quieted down at this time. However, everyone's eyes were on the king rank experts. Everyone was thinking when these king rank experts would kill Yi Shiwen. However, those Monarch Division experts could be said to be 1 in 1,000, and their numbers were limited. Now that the ancient Barons continent was in a state of chaos, and several major clans were clashing intensely, these Monarch Division experts were all stationed in one place. In their eyes, killing Yi Shiwen was just a trivial matter. Therefore, some people guessed that there might not be any king rank experts who would take action. And those king rank experts who had a grudge with Yi Shiwen were either dead or injured. Otherwise, if something happened, who would take action? However, at this time, Yi Shiwen, who was originally regarded as prey, announced to the world at this time, passing on King Taizong's decree. All foreign races that entered the human territory must leave within 10 days, or else they would be killed without mercy. For a moment, the world was shocked. Chapter 1730. Yi Shiwen's words shocked the entire world. Who was King Taizong? This point wasn't limited to the ancient Barons continent. Even the ancient Phoenix domain and the demon race were very clear about this point. As the #1 king of the human race in the past, he was known as an existence that was half a step away from becoming a martial emperor. He possessed extremely terrifying strength. Back then, he could be said to be invincible among his peers. If it wasn't for his sudden disappearance, many people believed that he might be the first martial emperor of the human race. However, that was something that happened a long, long time ago. Many people had their own guesses about King Taizong's whereabouts. Some said that he had ascended to a higher realm, while others said that he had passed away. But no matter what, it had been countless years. Even if he did not die back then, he should be dead by now. Now, Yi Shiwen had passed down King Taizong's decree and requested all the races to retreat. How could this not cause a huge commotion? If King Taizong was truly reborn, these foreign races might be jumping around happily now. However, if the news was confirmed to be true, they would immediately run away as far as they could. King Taizong was a bright star in the distant era. Even in that chaotic era, no one could overshadow his brilliance. However, it was only Yi Shiwen's decree. No one had confirmed it. Therefore, many people didn't believe it at all. If King Taizong was still alive, how could he watch the demon race wreak havoc? How could he watch the Abyss Demon Lord destroy the Imperial Court without doing anything? One should know that although the Abyss Demon Lord was powerful and almost unbeatable in the current era, he was still incomparable to the legendary King Taizong. Everyone treated it as a joke. After shocking the world, they quickly fell silent and forgot about this news. On the contrary, the joint attack of several races against the human race became the biggest news in a short period of time. The entire ancient desolation was in a storm. The collisions between the various races had never stopped. Although the ancient desolation and the demon race were still regrouping, waiting for the next round of annihilation, the small collisions had never stopped. Although the other races were encroaching on the territory of the human race, they did not touch the foundation of the human race. It was not that Mount Shi did not want to, but it was deliberately preserved. On the one hand, it could be used as a force to contend against the devil race. On the other hand, among the human race, apart from the Imperial Court, Mount Shi was the one that retained the most essence. If one wanted to break through Mount Shi, no matter what race it was, they would have to pay a high price. That was precisely why they were so arrogant. They did not expect that Yi Shiwen would appear out of nowhere, and not only did he not give them any face, he even killed many Demon and 100 Races Alliance champions in a row. Bring Yi Shiwen's head to see us. Otherwise, we will destroy the foundation of the human tribe. Finally, the 9 fierce beast tribes spoke. Their words were powerful and overbearing, shaking the world. The 9 fierce beast tribe was going to go all out against the 9 fierce beast tribe. Originally, the 9 fierce beast tribe could not be compared to the human race. Even the entire demon race could barely suppress the human race. However, now that the human imperial court had been broken through and countless champions had fallen, even if there were remnants of the royal and marquis tribes, their strength would not be much higher than the 9 fierce beast tribe. After all, although these royal and marquis tribes could compete with the 9 fierce beast tribe in the past, now that all their champions have fallen, they might only be able to compete with the 9 fierce beast tribe if they join forces. The serious damage that the human imperial court had suffered in the battle was evident. What was even more terrifying was that all the king division masters had died in the battle. The imperial court was the root cause of the fall of the human race. Without the protection of the imperial court, the king division masters would not last more than a few moves against the abyss demon lord. Without the protection of the king division masters, it was the key to the complete decline of the human race. Otherwise, although they had lost more than half of their ordinary masters in the imperial court, there were still many masters left in the territories of the royal and marquis. However, these people were nothing in front of a true expert of the king division. The 9 fierce beast tribe had actually announced that they would completely wipe out the human race. Their arrogance and despotism could be seen. However, the human race could only swallow their anger because they were not strong enough. After the 9 fierce beast tribe, the North Mountain tribe also announced that they wanted Yi Shiwen to present his head. Otherwise, they would join forces with the 9 fierce beast tribe to wipe out Qi Mountain, completely wiping out the last heritage of the human race. For this reason, the major forces of the human race in Qi Mountain could be said to be in danger. Some people simply wanted to rely on the demon race or the alliance of 100 races. Even if they were to become slaves, it was much better than having their heritage cut off and their race wiped out. Didn't the ancestors of the human race rise from being slaves? In the future, there would be a day when the human race would rise again. However, there were also some people who strongly opposed it. They would rather fight to the death than to bend their backs. These years, the human race had enjoyed the glory in the ancient wilderness, and many people were also unwilling to become like that. This was the last heritage of the human race. If it was also breached, it would be no different from the extinction of the human race. Even if there were many human race living in various parts of the ancient wilderness, what was the difference between them and blood? Although these human race warriors were usually high and mighty, they had always been guarding the peace and the heritage of the human race. If even they died, what hope did the human race have? The North Mountain tribe and the 9 fierce beast tribe were arrogant and domineering. Even the entire demon race and the alliance of 100 races were supporting the 2 races. They could not wait to completely wipe out the human race. This way, they could divide up the heritage of the human race in Qi Mountain. They had been coveting it for a long time. Apart from that, the Sea tribe and the Demon tribe were also restless, wanting to completely destroy the human tribe. The heritage of the human race was too rich. In addition to the battle of the imperial court, most of the things fell into the hands of the demon race. A large part was brought into Qi Mountain by the powerful human race. However, the human race was still quarreling with each other even though a storm was approaching. Many people were still arguing whether they should hand over Yi Shiwen in exchange for peace or not. There were also many people who bluntly said that it was Yi Shiwen who brought this crisis and trouble. Without him, the human race could completely lie dormant. Later, taking advantage of the war between several races, there might be a chance for them to rise again. It was a time when they needed to endure hardships. Yi Shiwen was too high profile and caused these troubles. Some people even said, let Yi Shiwen tie himself up and go to accept his punishment. Let Yi Shiwen die to apologize to the world. Words like these filled the ears. But no one dared to really make a move, because everyone was very clear about how terrifying Yi Shiwen's strength was. Even the Joeying clan and the North Mountain clan suffered a big loss in the hands of Yi Shiwen. If it was the current human race, naturally, they could not control Yi Shiwen. They could not do anything to Yi Shiwen at all, so they could only settle for the next best thing. Let Yi Shiwen consider the inheritance of the entire human race and surrender himself to save the human race. He would be the hero of the human race and so on. After all, the human race was facing a disaster, and they had no real way to deal with the devil. But at this time, the Yi family was fiercely opposed. Now, the Yi family, which was rooted in Qi Mountain, also had a skyrocketing status among the human race. And time passed in this kind of noise. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Under the push of many people, the North Mountain clan and the Joeying clan could not bear it anymore. Let the human race become history and destroy it in one battle. The Joeying Demon King ordered coldly and ruthlessly. Didn't they say that King Taitsong has manifested? Then let him come out. If King Taitsong is here, I will immediately retreat. The Joeying Demon King declared disdainfully. Now even King Taitsong's Taitsong seal has fallen into the hands of the devil race, and they still dare to play tricks. Let the human race become the slaves of the various clans again. They are only worthy of being slaves of the various clans. This was the patriarch of the North Mountain clan. As the patriarchs of the two major clans spoke, some of the vassal clans also clamored. They wanted to wipe out the human race, to turn the human race into slaves, and to uproot the human race and turn them into bloodstones. At night, the sky was cloudless, and a huge round moon hung in the sky. The cold moonlight sprinkled on the earth, illuminating countless human tragedies. The demon race, the base of the Joeying clan. The Joeying clan, as one of the top 10 royal clans of the demon race, had a vast territory within the demon territory. However, the Joeying clan, in addition to the experts who were stationed in various places, most of the experts were gathered in the ancestral land. In this area, the law of water and law of fire were very active. Here, the cultivation speed of the experts of the Joeying clan was much faster than in other places. In the distance, on a foothold on a mountain peak, a few figures appeared under the moonlight. It's not easy to intimidate the myriad clans. Let's start with the Joeying clan. At this time, the young king among the figures said. It was King Taitsong. His youthful face looked at the Joeying clan with a cold expression. Beside him was Yi Shiwen, dressed in a green robe, standing with his hands behind his back. Next to Yi Shiwen stood a middle-aged man who was transformed from a star beast. Next to the star beast was a tall and strong young man. It was none other than Yi Shiwen's good friend, Yi Fan. At this time, Yi Fan's face was full of excitement. Ever since they found Yi Shiwen, they did not gather for long before they found out that Yi Shiwen wanted to go against the law and slaughter the entire Joeying clan. Therefore, he volunteered to help Yi Shiwen. Originally, he wanted to help Yi Shiwen get rid of those troublemakers. Who knew that those guys would be so frightened by Yi Shiwen's previous massacre that they didn't even dare to show up. This made him feel quite bored. However, was there anything more shocking than slaughtering the entire Joeying clan? Under the moonlight, the curtain of the bloody night began. Chapter 1731. I don't have much time left. King Taitsong's face revealed a weathered expression. I originally wanted to return to the primordial era and pass away peacefully. However, I never expected to encounter something like this. Thank the heavens for allowing me to do my last bit for the human race at a time like this. Yi Fan didn't know King Taitsong's identity. He only knew that he was a very powerful senior. However, Yi Shiwen had a deep understanding of him. He had a complicated expression on his face. He never thought that he would meet such a peerless figure like King Taitsong. However, now he didn't have much time left. During this period, Yi Shiwen also heard about some past events from King Taitsong. Not long after he was crowned king and entered the imperial court, he learned about the existence of the divine battlefield. He originally wanted to explore it. However, he found that the seal of the battlefield was about to break. These deities were about to break the seal and rush out. Once they rushed out, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, he could only stay in the divine battlefield to guard it. For countless years, he had fought with deities in the battlefield many times. Some time ago, he had encountered the Abyss Devil Lord. Although the Abyss Devil Lord had suffered serious injuries in the battle, Tai Tsong King, who was already at the end of his rope, was on the verge of dying. If Yi Shiwen hadn't come, Tai Tsong King would have passed away within a month. Later, Yi Shiwen revealed his identity. The Yi family and King Tai Tsong's bloodline were originally very close. Naturally, the relationship between them was not ordinary. King Tai Tsong also asked Yi Shiwen to bring him back to ancient times. Who knew that now, this peerless figure of the past only had a trace of obsession left. When he returned to ancient times, even this last trace of obsession was about to disappear with the wind. 10 days passed. King Tai Tsong's decree that Yi Shiwen mentioned had also become a joke. Originally, King Tai Tsong's name was still shocking to many foreign races. However, as 10 days passed, the legendary King Tai Tsong didn't have any intention of coming out. Therefore, everyone regarded this as a joke. No one can survive from such a distant era, even if he is King Tai Tsong. If King Tai Tsong is here, let him come out. I don't believe it. This must be Yi Shiwen's bluff. There is nothing to be afraid of. Trample the human race. Trample the human race. Yi Shiwen and the others were finally going to make their move tonight. Yi Shiwen, we don't have much time, so we must act fast. Otherwise, we won't be able to deter the foreign races. That will give our race some breathing space. King Tai Tsong indifferently said, Yes, first the Jiuying clan, then the North Mountain clan. All of them must die. I want to see if they have such a big appetite. Yi Shiwen sneered. The ancestral land of the nine-headed infants tribe was an incomparably huge mountain range. At this moment, under the night sky, there were still many noises and roars from the demon clan. Countless nine-headed infants in the ancestral land of the nine-headed infants tribe did not realize that the real danger was coming. After tonight, the world will be shaken. We will use the heads of the nine-headed infants tribe to pay tribute to our fallen brethren. Yi Shiwen shouted loudly. His hands tore a huge crack in the void, and the crack spread out. Within it, countless mechanical beasts rushed out. These were all mechanical beasts from the Demon King's treasury. There were hundreds of thousands of them. Although there were only hundreds of thousands of them, the weakest was at the 9th level of the Celestial Realm. Among them, there were tens of thousands of Celestial Realm-level mechanical beasts. Such a mighty army could even slaughter a giant like the nine-headed infants tribe. Suddenly, countless mechanical beasts rushed out, alarming the entire nine-headed infants tribe. After all, the ancestral land of the nine-headed infants tribe was the ancestral land of the demon clan. Countless arrays were instantly activated. These mechanical beasts rushed out from all directions and directly rushed into the nine-headed infants' demon king. Who dares to invade the ancestral land of the nine-headed infants tribe? Are you tired of living? Suddenly, a loud roar came from the ancestral land of the nine-headed infants tribe. Past the decree of King Tai Tsong, the nine-headed infants tribe does not respect the decree. Kill! Yi Shiwen shouted. What, King Tai Tsong? What a joke! Yi Shiwen, you're Yi Shiwen. At this time, all the members of the nine-headed infants tribe were panicking. They never thought that they would be attacked. As one of the 10 royal tribes of the demon clan, they had a strong foundation. Who dared to attack them? It had always been them shouting and killing. Now, someone actually attacked their ancestral land. At this time, the nine-headed infants tribe was in a frenzy. A great enemy had come to the nine-headed infants tribe. Who dared to attack the ancestral land of the nine-headed infants tribe without any confidence? Boom! Yi Shiwen directly slammed his palm into the ancestral land of the nine infants tribe. It was unknown how many great arrays were destroyed, but a large part of the ancestral land of the nine infants tribe had been destroyed. Bang! The entire ancestral land of the nine-headed infants tribe began to shake violently. Many members of the nine-headed infants tribe saw this scene and were scared to death. It was too scary. How did Yi Shiwen grow into such a terrifying existence in such a short period of time? At this time, the star beast finally made its move. It formed an incomparably huge beast claw and directly tore a huge crack in the array of the nine-headed infants tribe. Yi Fan, on the other hand, led countless mechanical beasts and directly charged in. King Tai Tsong floated in the void and looked coldly. He did not directly make his move and seemed to be waiting for something. He was waiting for the foundation of the nine-headed infants tribe. Countless years ago, I once attacked the ancestral land of the nine-headed infants tribe. This time, I will let everything happen again, King Tai Tsong murmured. The current territory of the human clan was naturally not made up out of thin air. It was snatched from the hands of the demon clan in the past. Both sides had already clashed with each other. Damn it, Yi Shiwen, you are too arrogant. After today, I will slaughter the entire human clan. From now on, the human clan will become a part of history. An ancestor of the nine-headed fierce beast tribe could not help but burst out in anger when he saw that the human clan had suffered such serious losses. After today? Wait until you can survive today. Yi Shiwen sneered. He did not care at all. Under the leadership of Yi Fan, countless mechanical beasts directly rushed into the base of the nine-headed infants tribe and continuously slaughtered. If the demon clan of the nine-headed infants tribe did not fear death in order to protect the ancestral land, then these mechanical beasts did not even have the concept of death. Both sides began to fight fiercely. Every minute, there were experts of the nine-headed infants tribe dying or mechanical beasts being destroyed. To catch the bandits, first capture the leader. Yi Shiwen, go to hell. At this moment, an incomparably loud roar came from the nine-headed infants tribe. Immediately after, a huge hand directly grabbed out of the void and turned into an incomparably huge beast claw. With the power of water and fire, it grabbed towards Yi Shiwen. This was the plan to capture the leader first. After killing Yi Shiwen, they would deal with the other mechanical beasts. He understood this point. These mechanical beasts were all under Yi Shiwen's command. If Yi Shiwen died, these mechanical beasts would naturally stop. However, he still misunderstood Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's cultivation was extremely terrifying. He had already reached the peak of the celestial realm. Although he had not entered the king division, he was more than twice as strong as the eldest prince of the nine-headed infants tribe. This was because he had countless more years of accumulation than the eldest prince of the nine-headed infants tribe. However, as long as he did not enter the king division, Yi Shiwen did not care at all. He directly stretched out a hand, and a palm descended from the sky, slapping towards the beast's claw. Rumble! Both sides met in midair and collided fiercely. There was no trickery at all. It was a terrifying collision of physical bodies. The nine-headed infants tribe was one of the 10 great demon kings of the demon race. Its original form was a type of nine-headed, long-legged water fire viper. It was tempered by the power of water and fire every day and was already very tyrannical. However, compared to Yi Shiwen, it was still not enough. Not to mention, its realm was far from Yi Shiwen's. In an instant, this incomparably huge beast claw cracked. Blood splattered in the void as it began to break apart. Its tight skin directly cracked. The scales on the surface of its skin also shattered piece by piece. It had just made a move, but it had already suffered greatly from Yi Shiwen's hands. However, the power of Yi Shiwen's palm was still gushing out continuously. In an instant, it swept out. Bang! An incomparably loud sound of metal clashing could be heard. This huge beast claw began to crack inch by inch. Immediately, a figure fell out of the void. It was a middle-aged man. His face still had a look of disbelief. How could this be possible? Although he knew that the eldest prince of the nine-headed infants tribe had died tragically in Yi Shiwen's hands, he did not care at all at that time. This was because he felt that the eldest prince was simply too reckless. He actually dared to bring a person along. Otherwise, how could things have turned out like this? Moreover, his martial power was many times stronger than that of the eldest prince. In the nine-headed infants tribe, he also had a high status and was very powerful. Who knew that he would fall into a complete disadvantage and even be seriously injured in the first exchange with Yishuan. At this time, how could he not understand that this was an unparalleled and terrifying enemy? Being targeted by such an enemy, even the nine-headed infants tribe would probably be seriously injured. It was laughable that they did not even put Yishuan in their eyes previously and wanted him to die. Previously, they did not make a move, other than the fact that they had to prepare too much to wipe out the human race. It was also because the name of King Taitsong had truly stunned them. 10 days. They also wanted to see if King Taitsong would come out after 10 days. And now, the existence of such a god of death had finally appeared. Chapter 1732. That celestial realm pinnacle expert from the Nine Infants clan didn't dare to stay any longer. He hurriedly tried to escape into the formation and borrow the power of the formation to destroy Yishuan, who knew that Yishuan's speed was even faster. He directly drew out a large hand and grabbed him out. Pung! That peak celestial realm expert was directly grabbed to death, and blood splattered across the sky. Yishuan's expression became colder and colder. He shouted, "Today, I will uproot the Nine Infants tribe." Groups after groups of mechanical beasts flew out from the cracks. Hundreds of thousands of mechanical beasts swept out at once. Such a force was enough to destroy any inheritance. Under the attacks of the mechanical beasts, the outermost formation could not hold on for long, and suddenly collapsed with a loud bang. Facing these mechanical beasts that did not know what death was, a large number of nine infants living in the ancestral land were slaughtered. There was a continuous stream of nine infants that were killed and returned to their original forms. Corpses were everywhere, and blood flowed like a river. Yishuan also followed directly. They waved the angel's sword in their hands. Every time they waved the sword light, the void would explode, and the array would be broken. How is this possible? There are so many mechanical beasts. Where did Yishuan get them from? It's impossible for the human race. Within the Nine Infants tribe, countless people were shocked. They might have thought that someone could threaten their ancestral land, but it was the demon race that was running rampant now, and not the human race that seemed to have completely declined. Although it was still not enough to fight against all the experts of the demon race, compared to the Nine Infants tribe, it was still strong enough. Countless alarm bells rang incessantly. More and more experts from the Nine Infants tribe woke up from their deep slumber and secluded cultivation. Xiao! 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 Countless waves flooded the sky, and flames covered the sky. The power of the combination of water and fire was endless. However, these mechanical beasts were not afraid of the power of water and fire at all. They directly charged forward and broke through the power of water and fire. Yishuan took the lead and split the waves. Everywhere he passed, he was like a sharp arrow, directly attacking the yellow dragon. Everywhere he passed, countless experts of the Nine Infants tribe exploded on the spot. Damn it, Yishuan! How dare you attack our Nine Infants tribe? Suddenly, there was a loud roar, followed by a terrifying roar. Finally, within the Nine-Headed Infants clan, a king-ranked expert who had been left behind to guard the area flew up. The sky seemed to be on the verge of shattering. A terrifying coercion swept over and crushed towards Yishuan. Yishuan's body also seemed to have a reaction, and an inexhaustible, imposing aura instantly swept out. It was also the imposing aura of a king-level expert, and it didn't give way in the slightest. Boom! Both sides' auras, laws, and Tao runes collided fiercely in the void. Just the collision of auras was enough to destroy everything and shatter the sky. Around them, be it the experts of the Nine Infants tribe or the mechanical beasts, they were all shattered. After entering the king tier, one would be incomparably strong compared to ordinary people. Yishuan looked at the person who came. This person was not the Nine Infants Demon King. In terms of aura, he was slightly weaker than the Nine Infants Demon King. However, he was also a supreme expert of the king tier. The foundation of the Nine-Headed Infant tribe was indeed very deep. It was no wonder that they were one of the top 10 royal tribes of the demon race. Even after the rebellion of the new king and the chaos of the Kuan Peng in just a few hundred years, there were still experts of the king stage other than the nine-headed infant demon king. Only experts of this level could be considered as the real existence of the world. The reason why the human race was so passive was not because of the heavy casualties of the middle and lower level experts, but because almost all the experts of the king tier had died in battle. All of them died in battle. This was the root cause of the rapid decline of the human race. However, Yi Shiwen had already expected this. During the Kuan-Peng Rebellion, the Kuan-Peng led a few beast kings and rushed over. The injured nine infants demon king would definitely not be able to resist the attack of the Kuan-Peng. It was said that at that time, several king tier experts appeared and repelled the attack of the Kuan-Peng. It's you, you little bastard. I didn't expect that the king couldn't kill you back then, but now you have become a big problem. The king tier expert looked at Yi Shiwen with a ferocious look and roared. It's not too late to kill you now. What about the nine infants demon king? Yi Shiwen said coldly. Although it was the Abyss Demon Lord who killed Yu Lian, if it wasn't for the nine infants Demon King and the others, Yu Lian wouldn't have died on the spot. If Yi Shiwen had been one step ahead of them, the tragedy would not have happened. The king has already gone to the Four Clans Alliance. You still don't know? The Jiuying king looked coldly at Yi Shiwen and said, the demon race is too powerful. It is imperative that we join forces. As for you humans, you will be the first target to be eradicated after the alliance is formed. I don't know whether the human race will be eradicated or not, but your nine infants tribe will be eradicated today, Yi Shiwen said slowly. How dare you? The nine infants demon king said angrily. Disobeying the decree of King Tai Tsang alone, your entire tribe should be eradicated. Yi Shiwen's tone was extremely cold. Around him, there were shouts and screams. The mountains were continuous and tall. The night of blood had just begun. King Tai Tsang, you want to scare my tribe with a dead man? Tell him to come out if you have the guts. The nine infants demon king looked at Yi Shiwen coldly and said, Yi Shiwen, if you know what's good for you, you should leave now. Otherwise, when my king returns, it will be the day of your death. Do you really think I didn't prepare anything? The space-time connection outside has been severed. It is impossible for him to teleport over. By the time he flies over, you will have already been uprooted. Stop dreaming, Yi Shiwen sneered. That's impossible. Our clan's teleportation formation was set up by our ancestors. Even a king-grade expert wouldn't be able to cut off the connection. The nine infants demon king did not believe it at all. If it was so easy to get rid of them, their nine infants tribe would have been eradicated countless times. Idiot, I already told you the real reason, but you still don't believe me, Yi Shiwen sneered. However, at this time he did not continue to say anything. Countless Tao patterns spread out from under his feet. They were arranged in a mysterious way and swept out in all directions. Those nine infants tribe experts who rushed over were all killed. They could not even get close to Yi Shiwen. This was the true terror of a king tier expert. On the other side, the star beast led the mechanical beasts. Their speed was extremely fast, and they directly pierced through several lines of defense. Wherever they passed, they were invincible. Their terrifying strength was completely displayed. With a swipe of their claws, a large number of nine infants demon clan members were killed by them. They had no way of fighting back. Behind him, Yi Fan was happily killing with his heavy sword. He was like a killing god, terrifying to the extreme, a blood-soaked killing god. Although he had not reached the level of a king tier expert, his Heaven Realm peak cultivation was enough to protect him on the battlefield for a few rounds. However, the most terrifying thing was still the Star Beast. No matter what kind of expert came, they were all killed directly. Behind them, the army of mechanical beasts charged into the ancestral grounds of the nine-headed infants tribe. As for Yi Shiwen, he could focus on dealing with this king of Jiuying. At this moment, he had already been driven mad by everything that was happening in front of him. His hair fluttered in the wind, and the spear in his hand was like a dragon, attacking Yi Shiwen crazily. To catch bandits, first catch the leader. Moreover, if he did not get rid of Yi Shiwen first, then he would not have a way to get rid of the Star Beast, Yi Fan, and the others. He thrusted his spear again and again. Every thrust of his spear shook the nine heavens. The blazing light covered the sky. Every thrust of his spear had evolved the great Tao, evolved the origin. He was very old, but he had already grasped the spear, Tao, to a very profound realm. Facing his attacks, Yi Shiwen's expression did not change. This was his first time fighting against a king-tier expert of the Heaven Realm Peak. He still needed some time to adapt, but he was not at a disadvantage at all. The angel's sword in his hand cracked, and a brilliant sword light burst out. In the sky, a huge sword light interweaved, blocking the spear light. Boom! 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 Both sides did not hold back. They only wanted to kill each other, but for a while, they were in a stalemate. Soon, the king-tier expert of the Nine Infants tribe realized that Yi Shiwen's combat power was increasing at an alarming rate. At first, he was not used to it, but soon, he had completely mastered the strength of a king-tier expert. After mastering the strength of a king-tier expert, Yi Shiwen's attacks became sharper and sharper. How is this possible? How can he be so strong? The king-tier expert of the Nine Infants tribe could not believe it. Even if they were both king-tier experts, how could he not be a match for Yi Shiwen after so many years of accumulation? He was extremely angry to be forced to this extent by a newly advanced king-tier expert. He continued to roar, but Yi Shiwen did not give him any chance to struggle. Angel's sword, sword of creation, between the heavens. The sword came down one after another, and the entire void was completely shattered. This is a technique of the demon race. How dare you collude with the demon race? The king-tier expert of the Nine Infants tribe roared in anger. Yi Shiwen could not be bothered to say anything more. The angel's sword came down like a heavy mountain. Boom! The king-tier expert of the Nine Infants tribe was blasted away, and the sky was torn apart in the void. Clang! With a sound, the sword light in Yi Shiwen's hand directly caught up and swept towards the king-tier expert of the Nine Infants tribe. The sword fell from the sky, trying to kill the king-tier expert. Chapter 1733. At this moment, the nine-headed infant king spat out a mouthful of energy, which turned into a shield and blocked Yi Shiwen's attack. Boom! A terrifying roar could be heard. This shield was also a supreme weapon, but it was no match for the angel's sword. It was smashed into pieces on the spot, bringing with it a sky full of sword chi. A dull sound could be heard. Although this sword did not completely kill him, the nine-headed infant king was directly blown away, crashing into countless mountains. This terrifying collision ended with Yi Shiwen's complete victory. Yi Shiwen stood in the void like a demon. For him, although he had not experienced a real battle at the king level before, his tyrant body was enough to ensure that he had the upper hand. However, his tyrant body was enough to ensure that he could completely gain the upper hand. At this level of battle, every strike contained Tao patterns. Yi Shiwen had just entered the realm. However, he had the mysterious space to analyze and comprehend the great Tao for him day and night. Therefore, his comprehension of the realm wasn't any worse than those veteran kings, even though he was just a new king. In terms of martial power, he had absorbed the power accumulated by the demon seed for hundreds of years and had already expanded to the extreme. The only thing he lacked was combat experience. The series of battles just now had made up for his shortcomings in this aspect. This was something that the nine-headed infant king would never have thought of. The light on his body shone brightly, and ancient characters of the god spirit, ancient scriptures appeared behind him. It was very terrifying. With one step, the entire ancestral land shook. Who dares to attack the nine-headed infant tribe? Before Yi Shiwen could continue to attack and kill the nine-headed infant king, a terrifying aura suddenly surged from the ancestral land of the nine-headed infant tribe. It was endless, and wherever the aura passed, the entire void collapsed. A huge beast's claw cut through the vast sky and instantly rushed towards Yi Shiwen, who was like a god. It didn't show any mercy and didn't give him any time to react. However, at this moment, King Taitsong, who had been watching from afar, finally made his move. "I've been waiting for you for a long time," King Taitsong sneered. Immediately, A huge hand descended from the sky and grabbed the beast's claw. Boom! The beast's claw and the big hand fiercely collided, and a shocking collision occurred. Then, the beast's claw was crushed and turned into a bloody mist that filled the sky. Even Yi Shiwen, who was at the king level, felt a faint tremor in his heart. What kind of monster is this? Yi Shiwen looked at the void. There was a terrifying figure behind the blood mist. It was as big as a mountain. What is that? Yi Shiwen penetrated through the blood mist. His eyes were like torches. He saw an incomparably huge Jiuying. Its 9 huge heads stretched across the vast sky. They were like pillars supporting the entire sky. There's actually such a powerful expert in the 9 Infants tribe. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but be a little shocked. The 9-headed fierce beast tribe was indeed worthy of being one of the top 10 demon kings. Apart from the 9-headed fierce beast king, there was actually such a terrifying existence. At this time, Yi Shiwen seemed to understand why Kuan Peng led several beast kings, but was unable to break into the ancestral land of the 9-headed fierce beast tribe. It was probably because of the existence of this ominous beast. However, at this time, the front claw of this Jiuying had already turned into a massive meat paste. It had been completely crushed by King Taizong. Just a moment ago, it had suffered a huge loss. At this time, the 9 heads of this Jiuying were firmly fixed on the young man in the void. It did not expect that the truly terrifying one was not Yi Shiwen, but the young man who had been silent all this while. Who are you? This Jiuying looked coldly at King Taizong and asked, There should be no strong person like you in the human race. Otherwise, how could the demon race have broken into the imperial court? I've already told you, but you didn't believe me. I am King Taizong. King Taizong's eyes were deep, as if there was a universe in them. He looked at the Jiuying and did not put it in his eyes at all. The 9-headed snakelet, which was as huge as a mountain, was enraged. How dare you trick me? King Taizong has long disappeared. In the past, no matter how turbulent the human race was, he never came out. How dare you impersonate him? As it spoke, the 9 heads of this Jiuying opened their ferocious mouths one after another. Endless power of water and fire directly formed a frenzy of energy and swept towards King Taizong. Any one of these energies could destroy heaven and earth. They were even more powerful than the masters of the king rank. Break! An incomparably huge and simple copper seal condensed above King Taizong's head and directly smashed down towards this wave of energy. Boom! Endless energy surged. Sand and stones flew everywhere, and even the horizon collapsed. It was terrifying to the extreme. Whoosh! However, everyone saw that this seemingly ordinary copper seal directly broke through this frenzy of energy. It carried a heavy weight as if it was light. It destroyed everything in its path like a hot knife cutting through butter, and then rushed in front of this Jiuying. Bang! Blood was dripping, and flesh and bones were flying everywhere. This powerful Jiuying's head was smashed and exploded. Roar! 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 This Jiuying was in so much pain that it kept roaring. It had 9 heads, and it was fate. Fairy actually had one of its heads blown off. Its entire body was in so much pain that it rolled on the ground. Countless palaces and arrays were completely crushed under its rolling body, and it could not fight back at all. Everyone understood that it was not that this Jiuying was too weak, but that King Taizong was too strong. Old ancestors. At this time, the king of the Jiuying immediately exclaimed. Originally, his greatest trump card was this terrifying old ancestor of the Jiuying tribe. As long as this old ancestor was still alive, he would not care about any external invasions. Even if the Abyss Demon Master came, he was confident that he could bite off a large piece of flesh from the opponent, who knew that his old ancestor had just made a move, and one of its heads had already exploded. Who was this young man? Could he really be King Taizong? Impossible. No, this was absolutely impossible. He absolutely did not believe that King Taizong actually existed. Even if he believed in the resurrection of the gods, it was still much better than believing that King Taizong was actually still alive. And just as he was about to go over, Yi Shiwen directly stood in front of him and said indifferently, "Your opponent is me. Now that you can't even protect yourself, don't look at others. I've said before that your Joeying tribe will definitely be annihilated today, uprooted from the roots." You actually, this king of the Joeying tribe was incomparably furious. He did not dare to believe that he was actually forced to such an extent by Yi Shiwen. "I'll fight you to the death." At this time, he did not dare to believe that the Joeying tribe would definitely win in the end. This young man was really too terrifying. A casual seal from him could kill an old ancestor of the Joeying tribe. At this time, Yi Shiwen was also secretly speechless in his heart. He knew about the legend of King Taizong, but only after seeing it for himself did he know what was terrifying and what was the so-called existence that was only one step away from becoming an emperor. And this was merely a trace of obsession. Who would really believe it unless they saw it with their own eyes? Even if Yi Shiwen saw it with his own eyes, he still found it hard to believe. Boom! This king of the Joeying tribe directly swept over with his long spear. At this time, under the incomparable grief and indignation in his heart, he did not even put up any defense and rushed towards Yi Shiwen with all his might. Countless powers of water and fire intertwined on his body, making a loud sound. An incomparably huge shadow of a Joeying vaguely appeared behind him, like a demon god. Yi Shiwen did not retreat. In his hand, the angel's sword swept out horizontally. His tyrant body was invincible, so there was no need to be afraid of anyone. Bang! The long spear and the iron sword collided fiercely, and blood instantly splattered out. This king of the Joeying tribe's hands immediately split open. Blood directly gushed out, and flesh and blood flew everywhere. At this time, he faintly felt that his hands were faintly numb. If it was only pain, he could still bear it. However, this kind of numbness made it impossible for him to display his full speed. Sure enough, just as he expected, Yi Shiwen would not let go of such a good opportunity. The long sword slashed down again. Dang! 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 After a terrifying collision sound, his hands continuously trembled. In the end, even his bones were directly broken. The long spear directly flew out, turned into a stream of light, and disappeared. Poochie! Yi Shiwen's sword immediately followed up, and with one sword, this king of the Joeying tribe was directly cut in half. Even when he died, his eyes were wide open. He could not believe that Yi Shiwen's strength was actually so terrifying, especially his physical body, which was even more tyrannical than the demon clan. Even when he died, his mind still had one thought. What kind of monster was he? What kind of martial arts did he practice? The long sword dragged in the air, and drops of blood continuously dripped from the tip of the sword. This was the blood of a master of the King Division. To others, any drop of blood was like a precious medicine. On the other side, King Taizong was completely crushing the Joeying tribe's old ancestor with an overwhelming advantage. Out of the 9 heads of the Joeying tribe's old ancestor, 8 had already been blasted off, and only 1 was left. Boom! In the end, King Taizong stomped through the sky and crushed his last head. His mountain-like body slammed into the ground and caused a huge earthquake. Yi Shiwen slowly raised his long sword and said, "Today, the name of the Joeying tribe will be wiped out, and no one will be left alive." His expression was unusually cold, and the iron sword in his hand swept horizontally. Everywhere it passed, people were thrown off their feet. With the death of 2 of their iconic figures, the people of the Joeying tribe completely lost the will to fight and completely collapsed. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.